It's a revisit to a special place that rings in 12 of the series' best to pave the start of the road that leads to a championship. And it's tonight where the KBueno Racing Network welcomes you to the virtual Chicagoland Speedway. What marks the first step to a title and the first event of the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase. Welcome to the Hugger Oranges 300. As always, glad to have you with us on the KBueno Racing Network as this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season slowly inches to a close to decide a 2026 champion, where up atop the broadcast booth here in virtual Joliet, Illinois, I am Kenneth Bueno. Had a doozy just last Sunday. The virtual Richmond Raceway decided the 12 that move on to run for a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series title. We've been documenting them all season long. Some of the favorites, some of the surprise names, and others that are right in the mix, healthy enough to challenge for a season championship, whether it'll be their first or it'll be any other championships in their league history as an iRacing driver. This one going to be the first step of them all. Our second trip to this virtual Chicagoland Speedway. And again, what marks probably the most important part of the season, this race for the chase and the championship at Charlotte Motor Speedway that'll happen in early October, and it starts tonight with this intermediate track at Chicagoland. One of the big things we did mention over the course of the season, no major intermediate tracks through a bulk of the heart of the regular season. A lot of super speedways, short tracks. We had a road course in there. Our last proper 1.5 mile track, you have to go all the way back to Kansas in early May. It's been quite a while since the drivers have been in this position. And now with the championship on the line, the points on the line as well, they have to think about that as well. So we'll tell you all about that, what the drivers are involved, everything in the middle of it all as this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase begins for 2026. And those drivers that made it through now have to focus their eyes on being the best in the world out of the group that are among them in order to make it to the championship finale with a good points tally and make it with a championship in mind. So we move on from Richmond Raceway. We now decide the 12 that are in. Of course, we have hyped up the drivers that we know were going to be a part of this chase format, just given the fact of the season, how things have unfolded. Cedric Hunter, of course, the driver at the top of it all, and made things even better for himself in his case by winning the regular season finale at Richmond Raceway in the Commonwealth of Virginia last Sunday. So make that 8 race victories on the season. He's been outright the most dominant driver, but he doesn't have that many overall points compared to the rest of the field. All of them separated by at least 5 points. They go all the way down to Kevin Roy, who marked himself as the final driver in the 12th man that just snuck into the group. We had a great cut line battle through the last few weeks of the regular campaign. Well, now Chuck Stevens and Kevin Roy get to call themselves safe. Justin Urban, Alex Muscarella among those that for a bulk of the season were hanging right around that cut line battle. It's going to be fun now to watch them try and doozy with their way into this position where now they have to run for a championship. All the marbles are at stake, and of course things matter much more than anything else. We mentioned that Brandon Banks being one of the drivers at the top of the board for so long, probably the most consistent driver other than Cedric Hunter. He has a pair of race victories. He's also the defending winner right here from the virtual Chicagoland Speedway. So we'll just keep an eye on that, and of course how things unfold through the rest of these chase standings. And of course a different mindset overall, the playoffs last season. So it was just all about down to being the last driver alive in the Final Four, making it to Homestead of Miami Speedway, and being crowned a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series championship. But in this case, very different. Now the drivers have to be the most consistent over the race stretch. It starts tonight at Chicagoland, ends at Charlotte in the final race of the season in the Queen City. Cannot afford whatsoever to make any kind of mistakes. Well, one of those drivers in the heart of the chase format is the driver of the 94 for Cypress Racing Academy. He joins us now in Jesse Whittington. And Jesse, we have talked all season long about how being consistent matters, and especially for you, consistency has been the mark. Tons of top fives, yet to get a race victory, but most importantly, you are here fighting for a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series championship. What'll it take to be the top dog at Charlotte? How it starts here at Chicagoland?
Man, tonight is going to be all about keeping the car under you. It's going to be a tough race tonight, honestly. The track is slick. I feel like these types of races usually kind of fall into how I like the race to go, but I guess we'll see how everything turns out whenever it comes down to it.
It's been a little while, I mentioned earlier in the show, since this field, and yourself included, has run a proper 1.5 mile track. You have to go all the way back to Kansas, which was 110% power, lots of slick driving. You were among some of those that mentioned how slick and loose it was. What do we expect tonight, and how do you shake off the rust, if you will, for 1.5-mile racing and get back and dialed in tonight?
Ooh, that I'll give it to you. That's a good question. I really don't know. I mean, the best way to do it is just kind of get the laps in wherever you can. Like I've ran a couple races with a couple other leagues at mile and a halves. Of course, we've had NIS was here about a month or so ago. Um, so the biggest thing is just trying to keep yourself in the rhythm, not let yourself get out of it. And I think that's one thing that I've been able to do pretty well this season. Is I've been trying to push myself to get myself more uncomfortable. The more comfortable I can feel whenever I'm uncomfortable, the better I can perform, whenever it comes down to crunch time. So that's been my goal this season outside of this league. And, I thrive on learning and looking at telemetry and all of that kind of stuff. So, I think that's the biggest thing is just not letting yourself get out of the rhythm.
Well, I know you and I are going to be doing a lot of learning tonight alongside the rest of the field. So, Jesse, congratulations on making the Droppin Hammah Cup Series chase in your first rookie season, and best of luck as qualifying dials down here at Chicagoland.
Yep. Thank you, Kenneth, and have a great night.
Jesse Whittington, driver of the 94, part of a very successful Cypress Racing Academy team that has blossomed into a 3 to 4 man operation and has multiple drivers in this Droppin Hammah Cup Series playoffs, or chase rather, as Chuck Stevens also joining him in the mix. Zach Wilson, who has been probably one of the best drivers to show up late in the season and still perform on a consistent basis, although he did not have the minimum starts being able to make the Droppin Hammah Cup Series chase this year. He's still in the field. The team still has their full, and so they could be able to make an imprint. Two of those drivers, of course, running for the title, as we mentioned with Whittington, and his teammate, the driver of the 84, in Chuck Stevens. So last time we were at a 1.5-mile track, it was over in America's Heartland, a very wild race at the virtual Kansas Speedway, but you have to go back to Charlotte Motor Speedway to find one of the best stories. Cedric Hunter, who won his very first career Droppin Hammah Cup Series race, then has blossomed into probably the most dominant driver and the favorite heading into the DTH chase for 2026. Here's how he got it done one season ago. And the caution flag is out. There's trouble in the back of the field, and it's former race leader James Kunkel. 9.6 seconds. Moreno even quicker, 7.6 seconds. And it's Hunter, Hall, Harlow through the restart zone. Maggio has control. Not as good of a jump from the 5-time winner in Lawson Peel. It keeps Justin Erb in control of second.
And here comes Cedric Hunter. And there's the block, but Hunter's going to peek to the inside. There it goes, the 45, and it should be a relatively easy pass. He clears Maggio for the lead. One, here comes Peel now, trying to move up into second. Cedric Hunter, who went winless in the regular season, shows up at the right time, and he's into the round of 12. He wins here for Charlotte.
I don't think I can really say.
Hunter being involved in a very rare list of drivers that are now at the tallest part of the tree. Most wins of all time in the series. Hunter now ties Lawson Peel. Of course, them over Stephen Maggio with 4 wins. And you saw those other 2 drivers at the Charlotte Motor Speedway race one season ago. Cedric Hunter winning at Richmond Raceway last Sunday to cement a 8th career victory in this series, and 8 of them just in this season alone. That one at Charlotte was his only win on his route to the championship, 4 to finish right behind his teammate and eventual champion in Zachary Hall. Now Hunter wants to continue making history as he tries to become the first-time Droppin Hammah Cup Series champion to win 9 races at least, or 8 races at least, and move on to the finale and make it all the way until the end. Hunter joins the list of all those other 11 drivers that'll make it to this Droppin Hammah Cup Series chase. Only one can be a Droppin Hammah Cup champion at the end of it all. And as we get ready for this Hugger Oranges 300 and our 20th race of the 2026 season, let's bring you trackside and give you the starting order for this first chase race as things all unfold. Our second ever trip to this Joliet, Illinois 1.5 miler. Well, on the front row, it's the 48 of Alex Muscarella, nabbing the pole at a 29.978, winner of at least one race this season at the virtual Daytona International Speedway. He is one of those 12 Droppin Hammah Cup Series chase drivers highlighted in light green. And on the outside, a great qualifying effort for Justin Erb. The SKM Ford Mustang Dark Horse gets one of his best qualifying starts of the season. The 20 car in his first chase race is going to be the outside of row number 1 to the green flag. Jesse Whittington, who we talked to in our pre-race show and our countdown to green in a 94, he's run inside the top 3. And his teammate Chuck Stevens in the 84 on his outside. The 2 Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolet is doing very well in qualifying to end up in the top 5. Chuck Van Schaik in the 23, the rookie making the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase for the first time in his career. He'll line up 5th with Justin Hendry, the first non-chase driver on the outside of row number 3 in 6th position. Then back in row number 4, pair of teammates, Stephen Harlow and Steven Stepien, both of them at least a one-time winner this season. The 2 Chevrolets line up in row number 4. Warren Kyle-Keith starts this one from 9th, and Zach Wilson, the number 60 Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolet, he rounds out tonight's top 10. Matthew Parasini and Garrett Walden back to the top 12. Walden in his first Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase, running for the championship, and a very deep start for Cedric Hunter. Crashed in his last 1.5-mile trip at Kansas. Brandon Banks on the outside. Those are the top 2 in the point standings, with Richard Swavely and Kevin Roy to bring us our total 16-car field from Chicagoland. It's our second ever time to the racetrack. Let's go chase racing at Chicago for the first time. And a beautiful lap 1 from Alex Muscarella. The 48 Chevrolet leads by Lisa Carlin coming back to turn 1. Justin Erb trying to hunt him down through the fierce bumps in 1 and 2. Chuck Stevens already getting the best of his teammate Jesse Whittington, trying not to get flushed down in the sea of the other drivers around him. Charles Van Schaik and Justin Hendry getting through to the back stretch. And here comes Justin Erb on the high side. First lead change of the night. Make it quick for Justin Erb in the 20, new race leader to lap number 3. And here comes Stevens on the outside of Muscarella. Make that the proper fight for the runner-up spot. Everybody already gaining positions at the very high side of the racetrack. That's something we almost saw at the Michigan International Speedway at Rice, in which Justin Erb had done really well in. Now here comes Stevens on the crossover, pivoting and firing to turn number 1. Our second lead change comes at the cross of turn 1 on the beginning portion of lap number 4. Chuck Stevens with a beautiful drive out front, trying to pull away as the battle for third keeps up with Alex Muscarella and Justin Hendry for pulling away. And it's Chuck Stevens getting his first laps led here at Chicagoland Speedway, up by a few car lengths over Hendry and Justin Erb in their gauge battle for second. Hendry, of course, the only non-chase driver that's currently in this top 5. Everybody else highlighted in that bright green that you'll see highlighting the playoff drivers or the chase drivers over the course of this stretch, heading into Charlotte Motor Speedway and the finale in early October. What a drive from Justin Hendry. Fire off of turn number 4. He's got a run on the race leader, trying to make a move to the outside. Can't quite get there as they come back to turn 1. Already some crazy shifts in the balance of things as we got to the first few laps, and not often have we seen Chuck Stevens nor Justin Hendry at the top of this field, but give them fresh tires, you give them a good qualifying spot, and these two are ready to rip. Justin Erb has fallen back to third, no significant gains for the Arby's Ford Mustang in his second career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series postseason. Of course, made the playoffs last season, and in the chase this time around, near the bottom end of the top 12. This is going to matter a lot, of course, with the drivers all separated by 5. There are no playoff points involved, so as many wins as you can gather in a season will matter over the course of things, but it won't matter in races like this where it is mostly reset. As Stevens gives way, Justin Hendry breaks free on the high side, and our third lead change in the first 7 laps. We're going to have a Toyota out front for the very first time. Justin Hendry, the non-chase competitor, will lead this field off of turn number 4. But as I mentioned there with the chase, any foot forward is a good one. Even if you do have a deficit, like a driver like Alex Muscarella, a driver like Chuck Stevens, and even Kevin Roy making the chase for the first time back in 14th right now. They all have a chance if they perform well in this first race, gather enough points over the course of the night, and of course be able to walk away as a driver that gets the best foot forward heading into the next race of the chase. And as that consistent mark continues, if you're able to do that as a driver, be very good for you at the very end when Charlotte matters. Come the finale in what is our longest race of the season. There's Justin Erb, dart back to the inside of Chuck Stevens, and as they roll through the bumps here at Chicagoland Speedway, a newly renovated Chicagoland Speedway, might I add, a track that has been on the iRacing service for many a year, over at least a decade, that this track has been a part of the service, but just now getting the refresh treatment as NASCAR and the Cup Series went back to Chicagoland for the first time since 2019. Been a while since we've seen the Cup Series cars take on this track. And after a few years on an excursion over at the Chicago Street Course in downtown Grant Park, coming back to this Joliet, Illinois 1.5 miler that's very beloved by the fans alike. And this track getting redone on the iRacing service still has the bumps that makes this Chicagoland Speedway oh so very dangerous. This track born in 2001, one of the newer 1.5 mile ovals on the scene, but one of those that still shows its age. Very bumpy, very treacherous, and with the drivers' conditions that we have here tonight, it is going to be a lot of fun with that extra horsepower being added on for these intermediate track races. And again, it's been a while since we have gone proper intermediate 1.5 mile racing. The last sort of sample you can give yourself is over at Nashville Superspeedway many weeks ago at the late portion of the regular campaign, but again, it has been a while since a 1.5 mile dedicated cookie cutter oval has been a part of this series schedule. You have to go way back to the early days, the first few months, and while we were just starting to get a sprinkle of the sample size, it's been a long time since then. So, like we mentioned with Jesse Whittington, it's going to take a while for the drivers to get the rust off. Oh, contact there in the battle for the top 10, just on the outskirts of the top 5. That's Matthew Perusini getting a lick of Stephen Harlow, the winner from that Nashville Superspeedway race, and Brandon Banks right alongside them in the top 11 spot. Him and Cedric Hunter, the top 2 in the championship, going into this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase on a very interesting back foot. Brandon Banks not setting a qualifying time. Hunter being the last driver to do so. He was in the top 10. But obviously a very deep start for a driver that, for the most part, has dominated this series. Dominated Richmond in order to win that race. 9 career race victories, and trying to chase down what is the former Chicagoland Speedway winner in the 5 of Brandon Banks, who's now chasing down on the battle for 7th as Perusini is broken free. Zach Wilson and Jesse Whittington all around each other as the 6 car ends up right in front. The winner from just a pair of weeks ago as he moves into the top 7. Battle for 3rd underway. Turn 3. Charles Van Schaik and Chuck Stevens. Pair of Chucks in battle for the podium spot, with Steven Stempien not too far behind as he's gotten away from Jesse Whittington in what was a engaged combat for the back end of the top 5. Stempien having had a one race since Auto Club Speedway very early on in the season, and somebody who was really yearning to get back to Droppin the Hammah Cup Series victory lane. That DTH bright green, black, and silver number 88 Chevrolet at the back end of that shot, as this fight for 3rd continues on with Justin Erb still in this top spot as he's actually taken the spot away from Justin Hendry. So the fresh tire power over the first 15 or so laps, I think the dream is worn away just a little bit for the 85 and the 84, Hendry and Stevens, as they're starting to bleed time a little bit. Van Schaik, Stempien, and all these other drivers in the back half of the top 10 are going to start to creep forward as well. So as we continue greening this first run here from Chicagoland Speedway, let's get a look at our SKMcars.com race analysis. This is, of course, the typical 1.5 mile distance. Oh, there's a spinner off turn 4 and trouble. Stephen Harlow and Matthew Perusini getting in win. Harlow, a chase driver, and the yellow does come out for the first time tonight, and it is heavy front end damage for a chase driver in Stephen Harlow. And that is not the start to the chase that Harlow wanted. After breaking free at the Music City and Nashville Superspeedway, his first chase race of this year is now ailed by a hard hit to the outside wall and our first yellow flag thrown for the night. So Harlow was just tracking down Jesse Whittington. We talked about the bumps, how nasty they are here at Chicagoland. It just caught Harlow off guard. A hard overcorrection into the outside wall. Perusini gets involved. And Zach Wilson also getting a piece of that as he was at the back end of that train coming off of turn 4. Again, these are higher horsepower next-gen cars, very different from what the drivers, for the most part, are used to in official sessions. 737 horsepower beneath these NASCAR next-gen machines. The bumps still so treacherous in this Joliet, Illinois track. Here's the onboard look from Harlow. And just nowhere to go. And took a whale of a hit to the outside safer barrier. Perusini also with nowhere to escape. As he ended up right behind all of this. Take a listen. Just hard contact and nowhere to go. So those cars on pit road. Stephen Harlow might be the first DNF tonight, as will be under the yellow flag for the first time in this race. Several other drivers have hit pit road alongside those that were, of course, ailed in the accident. Zach Wilson and Matthew Perusini still with a chance to get back in this race, although it'll take them a long time to be able to repair all of their Chevrolets for the most part. Alex Muscarella and Kevin Roy among those that did come down pit road. Cedric Hunter also making his way in alongside Charles Van Schaik. So make that 8 cars that stay out on this opening yellow flag sequence of the night. And it was a sustained hit for Stephen Harlow. Came into this race at the back end of the top 12 in this chase format. And, of course, everybody separated by 5 points. Although Harlow wasn't too exactly off the mark from anyone else, still had a chance to breach into the top 5. Of course, that hit is going to take him out. And while every other playoff driver, or rather chase driver, are in, it's now going to result in a very deep blow for Stephen Harlow and the driver of the 6. Going to be out of this one until Rockingham next week. A brand new, refreshed 1 mile oval that has usually been known for having bumps as deep and as wild as this track does. But, of course, the track has been smoothened out with a brand new repave as NASCAR made their revisit to the Rockingham Oval after many years of it being gone from any sort of series schedule. But as the field doubles up for the first time, our first dramatic sequence of the night, our first yellow involving 3 cars, with Stephen Harlow, the chase driver, being the biggest marquee name in all of that. Of course, we look back at our skmcars.com race analysis right before that yellow had occurred. 200 laps here in Chicagoland. Of course, that equates to 300 miles and 480 kilometers in this Hugger Orange's 300. Of course, that is the usual mark of distance for all of these 1.5-mile tracks. But as we mentioned, it's been quite a while since the drivers have done a race exactly like this in a track that is built exactly as a 1.5-mile oval. So it's been very interesting to see the beginning portions of this race, how the drivers have dealt with it. It's Justin Erb with a very strong start and a very strong restart. Race high second for Steven Stepien. Beautiful jump off the blocks going into turn 1. He'll have a chance at the runner-up spot to clear. Brandon Banks moving into a race high third, trying to fight Hendry off of turn 2. Stepien now under fire again. Perusini loose off turn 4 will stay green. And it's Stepien marking the bottom. Brandon Banks trying to make his way through. And after the early high runs dominance by the 85 of Justin Hendry, it's worked out in his favor. All of the bumps not going the way of his Toyota Camry. Stepien clears coming off of turn 2. And onto the back straightaway once again. Erb trying to hold on to the race lead. Still clear by at least 2 car lengths. But here comes Stepien rallying off turn 4. Charlie Bauer Photography onboard camera shows the Massachusetts native creeping closer to the driver of the 20. Bobbling loose off turn 2. Here comes Stepien with a chance at running down the backstretch, having a run into turn 3 for the first time tonight. And after Stepien spent a lot of this time in the top 5, sideways is Justin Erb. Saves it, a wonderful save by Erb. We're going to stay green. Stepien now the new race leader after a huge scare from the 20 car. And again, the last thing you want to do is make a deer mistake like we saw with Stephen Harlow earlier on tonight and find yourself hard into the outside wall with a chase dream that might be fully daggered. It's Stepien that leads this race, and all of a sudden, Brandon Banks has put himself into the conversation. The South Carolinian looking for the lead off turn 4. And he's got the run. Brandon Banks to the line, new race leader. Make that at least 5 lead changes in the first 25. And as of quarter of the way through halfway, top 5 all occupied by chase drivers. Muscarella under fire from his teammate as he darted on the move inside turn 3. Stepien going to fight back, and he'll regain the spot as they come back to the start-finish line. Heads of lap number 26. What a wild ride we've had in the first segment of this event. And we're not even close to done. Again, all these drivers not coming down pit road. The leader off of pit lane is Muscarella. That's why he had to charge up to the front. But now trying to make sure that he can use those fresh Goodyear Eagles to his advantage. And in our race analysis, the drivers only have 4 extra sets of those Goodyear Eagles and tires to use up. So, of course, the rubber going down very quickly here at Chicagoland over a long green flag run. Muscarella hoping that his tire saving efforts could be used here as he tries to get around Stepien and what is Warren Kyle Keith on the offense. 48 car playing defense there coming off of turn 2. So already a very interesting set of circumstances. A chase driver in trouble, and we can now confirm the DNF list has been opened. Stephen Harlow in the 6, now out of this race. And that leaves only 14 cars to duke it out. The rest of them all chase drivers, or some of them not. But for the most part, everybody at the top end of this field are at least running for a drop in the Hammah Cup Series Championship, as there comes Muscarella after the moment there as Stepien got around trying to cross over off of turn 2, and Muscarella will have a chance to break on by. Stepien having finished runner-up at Richmond last Sunday to the driver of the 45 in Cedric Hunter, of course, the winningest driver of the season. Warren Kyle Keith having a bit of a tough night. Started 3rd, fell all the way back to 13th. And what was a near identical 16-car field at the Commonwealth of Virginia last Sunday. Of course, all those drivers that we've seen contend for the race victory week in and week out. 2 of the strongest drivers in this series may duke it out for 3rd place. However, battle for the lead is on. Fresh tire power for the Red Bull Chevrolet of Muscarella. Alex Muscarella pushing to the bottom. Banks having to play a bit of defense in turn 1. He'll have the run coming off of the turn 2 into the back straightaway for the first time on lap number 30. Banks breaks free, but again, the fresh tire power to the benefit of the Red Bull Oracle Chevrolet. Muscarella pinned to the inside, still side by side for the lead. And Banks wins the duel for a slight moment off of turn 4. Here comes Stepien in the run for 2nd. And then we've seen that outside so dominant, threading the needle is Muscarella. They've allowed the 3rd and 4th place cars to make a run at it for the top spot. Here comes Muscarella darting to the inside. Banks has to wash up through the bumps. Muscarella breaks through for a split second. He's got the nose ahead at the start-finish line. New race leader at Chicagoland. And that alone lets Stepien And what is now Warren Kyle Keith at Brant Bass Pro Shops Ford Mustang. Make a move at it. Here comes Banks back to the inside. This fight is not over yet for the lead of this race. Brandon Banks to the bottom. Turn 1. And how about this run for the race lead? Although they have a difference in tires. Banks is loose. So is Muscarella. They're going to break free. Stepien moves through. Middle 3 wide. What a drive for the top spot. And it's Steven Stepien to the race lead for the first time tonight. Oh my goodness. We had at least 3 cars get sideways at the exit of turn 2. Muscarella and Banks were one of them. Had too much of the throttle. And all of a sudden, Stepien is able to move on through. Keith is using the high side to his benefit right up against the outside boards. And Garrett Walden, the rookie who started deep in this race, first time the Walmart Chevrolet is in the top 5. And all of a sudden, Zach Wilson has also emerged in this fold as Muscarella has fallen back in this race. He has dropped all the way a lap down in 13th. What has happened to Alex Muscarella? A big-time hiccup for the 48 car and another chase driver that happens to be on the back against the wall as this first chase race begins. And again, it's different from the playoffs. You can win your way in from last season. You could have the most wins of anyone, but if you didn't finish ahead of the other 3 at the final race of the season, you just didn't win the championship. But now you have to always mark your consistency and always make sure you're running well in each and every one of these given races, because any one can spell disaster and, of course, mathematically make you ineligible for the championship once the chase fully fleshes out and we get much closer to Charlotte Motor Speedway and get a much clearer picture as to which drivers will make it in, which drivers will be possible to make the championship run, and, of course, those that are just there for top 12 points at the end of the race. There's a look at Warren Kyle Keith. Of course, finished 13th back in the regular season finale at Richmond Raceway. Knew he was going to make it in to the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase, just, of course, given the overall season for the St. Augustine, Florida native and having the run of his life. The only driver as high up as the outside wall. And again, we've seen at Chicagoland is one of those few multi-groove 1.5 milers. You can run from the bottom, you can run in the middle, and you can take this Warren Kyle Keith line that we've seen by drivers like Kyle Larson and others, just running right up against the outside safer barrier. Seems to be working for Keith right now, but of course, we look at this longer stretch. These drivers at the front have not come down pit road. They've gone 38 laps on their set of Goodyear Eagles. Zach Wilson is the highest running driver on the fresh tires. And that's a 19-lap difference between them. So it is going to be a very big difference on the fresh rubber. We saw how Muscarella had it enough to make a run for the race lead. Oh, Warren is loose, or Walden is loose right in front of Zach Wilson. And as Wilson got involved in the first scuffle with Stephen Harlow, the yellow flag flies again. And it's Garrett Walden, another chase driver, in trouble. Chicagoland is taking a bite. Get a look at what happened between Walden and Zach Wilson, another chase driver involved. And this one just another skip through the bumps in 1 and 2. Car got loose. And we saw many drivers get sideways. Muscarella did. Brandon Banks did. Plenty of drivers have found trouble right about there. A corner exit, you're carrying so much throttle. And again, we mentioned with this extra horsepower, the setup probably isn't there to handle it that much. You do have to unravel this car a little bit off the corner to be able to save it. And Walden, unfortunately, one of those casualties getting involved. Here's the onboard look. Just overcorrected into the outside wall. Wilson right in his path. Look at Brandon Banks just having a whale of a time getting around. And after our second yellow flag flies here at Chicagoland Speedway, the drivers finally have a chance in the longest run to make it down pit road. Race for the lead. Steven Stepien will have it at least by a nose over Warren Kyle-Keith. That is the fight for the race lead. It's Brandon Banks in third, Cedric Hunter in fourth, and Justin Erb in this top 5. Garrett Walden down on pit road trying to repair his Chevrolet. Zach Wilson has also made his way down. He has also been added to the DNF list, and we just also got word that Alex Muscarella, after his situation to be put a lap down after being in the race lead momentarily in the fight with Brandon Banks, he is also out of this race. So Chicagoland in only 41 laps, we're not even a quarter of the distance through this race, has taken a large chunk of the playoff field or chase field with them. And it has become a huge wash. So with that, Steven Stepien will take the race lead in what was a wild first run. A first yellow coming out for chase driver Stephen Harlow with an overcorrection off of turn 4 into the outside wall, catching Matthew Peruzini, who is still in this race, by the way, albeit 2 laps down in 13th. And then Alex Muscarella having a breakaway to the lead, and then getting involved in a slight incident to take him down pit road and put him multiple laps down before putting it behind the wall and into the garage. And now our most recent scuffle, our second yellow of the race, Garrett Walden getting a hard hit to the outside safer barrier and bringing Zach Wilson with him. So a rookie driver in Garrett Walden, who has had a wonderful season entering tonight's race and entering the chase format, is going to have a lot of work to do next week at Rockingham Speedway in order to make himself known. And, of course, a huge drop-off for drivers like Muscarella and like Stephen Harlow. Of course, a lot of them scattered across the top 12 playoff field, but we look at drivers like Chuck Stevens, who is still in this race, Kevin Roy, who has spent a lot of this race at the back of the field, but has done a great job of keeping his car on all 4 tires, and all of these other playoff or chase drivers that are in this mix, now they have a chance to gain a gargantuan amount of points as this race is barely even all the way through. Green flag restart after our second yellow of the night in this Hugger Oranges 300. Great getaway by the race leader. Cedric Hunter has moved his way to third, highest we've seen the 8-time race winner in this race tonight, after rolling off way back at the edge of the top 10, trying to look underneath Warren Kyle-Keith. It's single file to the backstretch into turn 3. Well, look at the large send by Keith. Top 2 have broken away from the rest of this field. It's Hunter, Banks, and then Van Schaik and Justin Erb in their run for 6th place, as those 2 scrap for the last spot in this top 5. Van Schaik now the highest running rookie driver out of anyone in the chase this year, as that GOAT Racing diecast Ford Mustang makes a pivot to the inside, but Justin Erb makes the move on the high side of turns 3 and 4. At Chicagoland Speedway, we know that as, of course, one of the harder to drive 1.5-mile tracks, you have all the bumps, you have the multiple grooves, and with this specific horsepower package and this setup that tends to lean rather loose, as we've seen with the drivers in this race so far, Justin Erb with a huge save earlier in the night, and all the other drivers, chase or not, that have been involved in some kind of trouble over the course of the event. Chicagoland has a unique way of running around it. You see a lot of drivers running the middle to the high lane. That is by design. Of course, you can save right front tire and maybe a bit of the right rear by hanging to the bottom, being patient on the throttle, and just waiting for the car to rotate around the apex and get you to the corner exit. But you'll see a lot of times, especially as the run deepens and the tires get a lot more worn down, you'll see other drivers get heap of runs from the middle or the very outside. And that's because a lot of the bumps don't translate all the way up this 18 degrees of banking here in Joliet, Illinois. So that means you could have a situation where you use the high side, the driver on the bottom doesn't really have enough juice to make a run off the corner and carry as much throttle, while you can carry the throttle much earlier. And that's almost what you're seeing in this battle for the race lead now with 47 laps complete. Warren Kyle Keith has been using the higher lanes across this track, while Stepien has been faithful to the very inside. He got Stepien a very good run, saving his tires to be able to charge at it for the lead once the top two in front of him made mistakes. But for somebody like Warren Kyle Keith, if you can hang the middle, run the high side, use the tires maybe a little bit more, but still gather a heap of momentum as you come off of corner exit, it could matter a ton. We've seen countless times in prior history here at Chicagoland. That also includes last season's race here, where Brandon Banks won in an overtime restart, where you end up as the car on the bottom. Oh, Justin Erb is loose again, having to save that Ford Mustang. Calling the wheelman of the race, Justin Erb has been all over the track tonight. And once again, another illustrious save by Erb will keep him alive in this race for now. But you'll see often once the right front tire starts to go away in this track surface as the run progresses and as the rubber builds deeper within this race, you'll see being the inside may not be the proper line. You may have to scurry up and maybe a half lane, a full lane or two. Maybe you want to be all the way up against the outside wall like we saw with Warren Kyle Keith very early on in this race to be able to get at least a good run off the corner on a driver that you're trying to fight against. Or if you are in a side-by-side battle, you could very well win that fight by just being a lane higher than the driver on the inside. And we've seen a couple of those examples, especially in the run for the race lead. Now, it hasn't panned out for Keith, still trying those higher lanes, and still within a car length of the race leader in Steven Stepien. But as we see this race unfold, everybody else has single-filed for the most part. And the drivers have talked about, of course, the dwindling attendance over the course of the season. That happens to be normal for many leagues across the iRacing service, where you may have a ton of drivers sign up for race number one. But especially a year like this, as long of a season as it is, you'll see the diehards stay in, all the faithful drivers run each and every week, regardless of their finishing position. And then, of course, those that end up bleeding out of the running order and just end up being some drivers that make it whenever they can, and many others that don't as well. And that has been a topic of conversation, especially near end of the regular season. The admins have been talking about quite a lower driver car count. That doesn't necessarily mean a bad race by any stretch of the imagination. You could have a 15, 10 car field. You can even have an 8 car field or less and still have a very compelling race to the finish from start to end. However, it does get a little harder to find a lot more competition out there, and could result in races like these where you have these fields that string out over the course of the night. As a beautiful run off turn 4 gets Warren Kyle Keith a look into the daylight, battle for the lead. First time that Keith is up here fighting for the top spot at lap 53. And using the long way around of turn number 2, new race leader in this chase race from Chicagoland, Warren Kyle Keith, the top spot. Keith, of course, still trying to gain his first career drop in the Hammah Cup Series win after being close many a time over the course of the season. That marks his 219th lap led on this 2026 season. Had at least a 5-race streak going of top 6 runs. Had 2 second-place finishes and a pair of 3rd-place runs, and then the 6th-place run after starting in the runner-up spot at New Hampshire Motor Speedway back in late July. But then Nashville and the last race of the regular season at Richmond just haven't been too kind to him. Started in the top 10 for both races, qualified 3rd last Sunday in the Commonwealth, but just could not rally that into a good finish. 16th at Nashville Superspeedway, and then 13th at the virtual Richmond Raceway in Virginia. So while this Warren Kyle Keith car has found his moments of promise, his moments of speed, of course there happens to be that little bit of a lull that follows him in the back. Look, that happens as well. And again, we mentioned so many times this year, if you want to find a driver that is willing to put it all out there on the line, doesn't matter how worn his tires get, doesn't matter if the experiment works or not, somebody that's willing to try things differently and is willing to be out there and outspoken, then Warren is your definite driver. Someone that in every interview, we talked about it just a couple of days ago, always not afraid to speak his mind, and a driver that in races like these Always runs up high, doesn't really care about it. Still a very fast driver and is always willing to try the new thing, even if it's not the orthodox way of doing it. Right now seems to be working for the driver of the 24. The St. Augustine native is holding off Steven Stepien in the running for the race lead, although it's taken a couple swings for Stepien to officially get the inside. It's always been Keith that gets the run off of turn 4, but not this time. Stepien is able to hang tough on the left quarter panel of the Brant Bass Pro Shops Ford Mustang, and here comes Stepien. Reignited battle for the lead to turn 1. Stepien, like we mentioned, having won twice this year, but hasn't won since May, or rather April of this year, at Auto Club Speedway at a 2-mile D-shaped oval, and now once again retakes the lead on Warren Kyle Keith, who's been faithful to the very outside. And while all this has been happening, the race for third has been silently ongoing between the top two in the championship. Cedric Hunter has quietly weaved his way up through this field as he started pretty far back, as well as Brandon Banks did. They were right on the same row with each other coming to the green flag. All the trouble happened around them. All the other chase drivers found trouble, and now here they are, just by surviving on a footnote. The 45 and the 5, the 2-time and the 8-time winner of this season, have now been able to crawl forward. Banks, of course, the winner of last season's race. And now having to watch on as Van Schijk goes into battle with the lap-down car of Matthew Parasini, trying to unlap himself and be on the Lucky Dog spot. He is in the current SKM Lucky Dog position right now, but trying to make sure he can at least get one lap back and be able to be one lap down if a yellow were to fly later on tonight to be able to get back on the lead lap. Of course, had that heavy front-end damage as a result of being involved in that incident with the 6 car of Stephen Harlow, who made that overcorrection off of turn 4 and just ended up causing the yellow for the first time in this race. So while all that continues on, Justin Hendry tries to catch up to the driver of the 5 and Brandon Banks. And again, we mentioned that Chicagoland race last season. It came down to a late race affair between teammates. Lawson Peel, before he eventually became the most dominant driver of the year, was right alongside the teammate. Banks leading them on the final green flag restart, and what for that moment was his first career dropping the Hammah Cup Series win. He would go on then to win Kansas, make it all the way to the championship finale at Homestead, Miami. Did not win the title, but has been the most consistent driver of this 2026 season. Has not finished outside of the top 10 for a bulk of the season, and when he did, he's only done it about 3 or so times. So he's been one of the best all-time drivers of the year. And as Lawson Peel has sort of taken a step back, oh, there's a spinner, turn 4. It's Warren Kyle Keith involved. Yellow flag comes out, and the experiment has run dry for Warren Kyle Keith. Third yellow of the night, and it's the driver we did not expect. Another chase trouble for Warren Kyle Keith. Escapes damage off of turn 4, but the tires might be gone for the Florida native. Ends up in this latest scuffle, and now brings out our third and most recent yellow flag of the night. Again, we've been talking about him running the very high side of the speedway and how that's worked out for him for the most part, especially in the running for the lead. Got it taken away by Stepien, and as he ran up top, just got a little bit too close to the sun. Car bobbled loose as he hit the bumps the first time, and oh, Cedric Hunter almost getting into the second place car at the time for the spin right in front, and it could have easily added on to what might have been a horrifying incident had Hunter not backed out of the way. Keith ending up in the slight spill. Get the onboard look coming back to turn 1. See the car already loose from the get-go, balancing right into the throttle, and then hits this bump. Car stretches sideways, and then, of course, tries to hit up the rear tires, lock up the brakes, and attempt to save that machine. Does a very good job of doing so, but, of course, it is going to cost him all that track position. Steven Stepien will win the race off of pit road, and what is a consensus 4-tire call for the entire field coming around this time. It's Banks second, Cedric Hunter third, Jesse Whittington, and Justin Hendry, the current running top 5, as they come off of the pit lane. So let's get a moment to talk with the driver of the number 88, currently leading this race, although it took some fights to get there. Steven Stepien joins us now. Steven, you got a copy?
What's up, Kenneth?
Always good to talk to you, Steven. And I think it's definitely a surprise for all of us just how wild this race has already been. Several chase drivers, including your teammate Alex Muscarella, are out of this race. A field that's thinned out. You've been in control of the lead after taking it back. I have to ask, behind the wheel, what has this felt like with the extra power and these harsh bumps at Chicagoland?
It's been interesting. It's gonna sound weird saying this, but it feels like rocking a lot. How sketchy the car is and how bumpy it is, and I'm just using how I would drive at Rockingham here, which is weird to say.
Well, it looks like so far it's worked out in your favor. You have the race lead. Just before we get started, fresh new set of Goodyear Eagles. What has been the difference so far in at least the sizable long green flag runs that we've had, even though they haven't been that long to a full green flag stretch?
Yeah, I mean, it's the car was loose. It's been very sketchy on edge, and the track's bumpy. It's just loose. We'll see. Hopefully we can get a long run. I'm just trying to stick to the bottom and just keep the tires under me and, get a win to start this chase off. That's what I would like to see.
All right, Steven, we appreciate the time. Best of luck on the restart.
Thanks, buddy.
Stepien will choose the outside lane for this restart after our third yellow flag of the evening comes out for a spin with Warren Kyle Keith. He'll start 8th on this restart. Green flag back in the air. Jesse Whittington with a beautiful getaway right behind the race leader. There was nothing that Brandon Banks could do to deny him a spot coming into turn 1. Race high, 2nd for the 94 Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolet. As here comes Justin Erb, fire off from the high side, looking on the crossover. The former race leader takes a peek under for 2nd to turn 3. And the Arby's Ford Mustang breaks through. Stepien leading by at least 3 car lengths as they come back to turn 1. And, of course, that spill by Warren Kyle Keith has dropped them all the way back to 8th. But we did see plenty of other drivers hit pit road. Now, as we see it, 11 cars on the lead lap. Matthew Parasini as well, we noted, was 2 laps down, was the only driver a lap down or more in this race. As a result of that yellow flag, got the SKM Lucky Dog. And the driver of the 96 for that Cypress Racing team, he's now back a lap down in this affair with a chance to gain 1 more if a yellow were to fly 1 more time at least in this race. There's Whittington in the battle for 3rd place with Justin Hendry. What a great start for Hendry and Erb. These 2 cars, as Garrett Walden finally gets back on the speedway after many laps down, has been a blistering start for these 2 cars. The drivers that we don't necessarily see too much of the front of this field, especially Justin Hendry, signed up midway through the campaign around the same time that Zach Wilson did. So while Wilson has made quite a significant impact to his new team, Justin Hendry, who was a part of the Sunoco Cup Series in the run and was actually part of last season's Droppin Hammah Cup Series in 2025, has rejoined the series and hasn't had a breakthrough moment until tonight. And that just shows you in a race like this, as we've seen it unfold, if you can keep all 4 tires on the pavement and have no problems, you probably could be okay without any damage and just keeping a car that is rather under you. We've seen Hendry and Erb, saw them use their tires quite significantly in that first run. They took the lead, but then gave it all the way back as everything developed. And now those 2, the fastest cars on the speedway, coming back to turn 1. 30.328 for Hendry in his 85. Hendry right behind Justin Erb, who clocked a 30.407. Both of them still at least a few hundredths of a second faster than the race leader. So there could be a chance for Erb and Hendry to make a stab at it once again on the early short run. And with 30 laps to go before the official halfway mark tonight from Joliet, Illinois, another proper battle for the lead. Many lead changes that we've seen tonight. And as Stepien has led already more than 30 laps in this race alone, that now marks it all but 3 races this season clocked in that he has not led at least 1 single lap. Those 3 races, Sonoma, Kentucky, and Iowa Speedway. Every other race, he has led at least 4 laps or more. Or rather, 1 lap or more, as here comes Herb to the inside. trying to take the race lead, a driver who hasn't led too much in this 2026 season, trying to lead what would be lap 139 of 2026 alone. New race leader, fire off of turn number 4. The top 3 have broken away from everyone in this field as Stepien tries to hold shy. Justin Hendry keep him at cove as they come off of turn 4, but can't quite let the door shut on him. Justin Hendry breaks free on the high side. He'll take a charge at it in the runner-up spot for second, but the only good thing for Steven Stepien right now, he is the highest seeded chase driver that is in this top 4. He came into tonight in the top 5, locked himself into the chase with a few races to go until the regular season had come to a close. So Stepien can hold his head high if he gets some good points tonight. And knowing the trend of this race with several chase drivers that have been out of it, Garrett Walden just rejoining the track 14 laps down in 12th. Any staying on the racetrack on the lead lap, especially in the top 10, is going to be a good one, especially in the first chase race of the season. Here's that battle in this position for 5th, as it's Brandon Banks slowly pulling away from Cedric Hunter. And again, Hunter right in the mix of history. If he's able to win at least one more race before the season is over, he will become the all-time wins leader in Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series history. The first season, 9 was set by Lawson Peel. We didn't think that was going to happen again, especially as this field opened up in season 2. And as we made the conversation point and the storyline that although Brandon Banks has been very good to start the season, he may not be the most dominant driver of the season. It may be a wide open Wild West in terms of the championship, an open landscape that was soon taken over by the Canadian. A driver who saw his teammate capture the championship last season has been oh so poetic to have him carry the torch, being one of the few Toyotas in this series to now be the long wolf in this all, the long odd driver to win the title this year. And the lone wolf on his team, really just someone that has now really broken into his own and probably the most consistent driver other than Brandon Banks in 2026. And Hunter with only one of those wins coming in season 1. We see a lot of the other resumes for drivers. Brandon Banks winning a pair of races this season. He now has 4 career victories. He won a pair of races last year. Other drivers that won multiple races, many of them not in season 2, but those that are just here. Either they captured at least 1 or 2 wins in either series. So they've spread out their success over the pair of seasons that have gone on. But Cedric Hunter just stacked it all in 1 year, sort of like Lawson Peel did in 2025. Just got 8 of those 9 race victories in season 2 alone. Boy, has he really blossomed into a driver that we have watched now as the odds-on favorite, but still a lot of work to do for the Canadian, still running 6th and falling short in the battle for 5th with his closest other competitor in this chase format in Brandon Banks for 5th. Now that won't matter given the scope of what's happening up front. The battle for the race lead now back underway. Justin Hendry had a kiss to the outside wall off of turn 4, but he's back in the game. He had a great run off turn 2 and is able to slingshot underneath Justin Hendry. Whether he's loose off turn 2 and turn 4, rather, he's going to get Steven Stepien involved, and another yellow comes out, and another chase driver ends up with damage. And now it's right front damage for the driver who has led arguably the most laps tonight. And another driver that bites the dust. Second look at it shows just a simple case of a driver getting loose off turn 4, tried to save it, got a piece of the brakes. And that's exactly where Stepien didn't see that car coming down the racetrack. Ends up with the hard hit on the right front. It is repairable for Stepien, but of course, another chase driver that ends up in the mess of another driver in this field or is directly involved. Here's the back end look from Hendry, already a wiggle off turn 2. This was the run for the lead. And listen to the car as it breaks free in the bumps in turn 4. He tries to hold on to the brakes, smoke coming up from the back end and the right rear. And then he gets that extra slap from Steven Stepien. who, as we see it, has not hit pit road with the rest of this field. But the onboard look shows watching for the lead, and then all of a sudden it got troublesome very quickly. Just tried his best to minimize the damage off the front nose of his car. But of course, not much you can do when a car is traveling down the 18 degrees of banking, and there's really nowhere for him to escape, especially in that specific moment. Now, Hendry has hit pit road. Or rather, he has rejoined the field in 4th. Everyone 5th on back have joined the field just now, but they did come down pit road on at least a splash of fuel or a 2-tire call on what is 5 to 6 second stops, and something that is also updated recently on the iRacing service, replicated the time total taken to have a pit stop on 4 tires with this NASCAR Next Gen car. Of course, it used to be around 14 to 15 seconds, but that was back when there was a 5-lug era. It didn't change on the sim for many years until just a few weeks ago, where the sim had implemented the brand new update where now the pit stop times are more reflective of real life. So a 4-tire stop is around 9 to 10 seconds at its best. And if you split that in half, of course, it usually indicates at least a 2-tire call or potentially a just splash-only call from those that are at least running 5th on back. Now, it's a definite gamble as we're not even halfway through this race, as we are still about 18 laps shy once we cross the start-finish line to that halfway mark at lap 100. However, you almost start to wonder if a 2-tire call might be the right call in this stretch of things, because, of course, only 4 extra sets of tires available. Drivers with 5 tire sets total, including the one that they started on in this race. So you don't want to use all of your tire sets very early on, especially in the first half. And we know this track, as wild as it's been to the field, has still been breaking loose, and you still have to keep the tires under you somehow. It's now been a case where if you do get a splash of fuel, you can just extend your run a little bit longer. Or if you get a 2-tire call, it might be a bit different of a call compared to what we've seen over the course of the night in trends, as this car has already been loose according to drivers in this field, and it may be even looser if you get only right side tires slapped on the race car. We'll deal with that later. Green flag restart at around 18 laps before the halfway mark. Out goes Herb from the blocks, and he is easily the driver uncontested for the race lead. Battle for 3rd underway. Justin Hendry, after the slight spill off turn 4, is already rummaging through the field at the back end of the top 5. Stevens getting past on the inside. There are other cars that just hit pit road behind. Hunter trying to break free into the top 5 for the first time in a little second. And it's Hendry trying to get back around Steven Stepien, who miraculously saves his stuff for now and is going to stay out on his strategy, hoping that the right front damage is not enough to hamper his performance. On board with Justin Hendry coming into turn 1. Hendry made a run at it for the lead, but of course, things got very sketchy at the end. And now trying to do his thing, go back to the front, led 6 laps in this race. The first time he has led laps in the field since July 27 at Talladega Superspeedway. It's been a little while since Hendry has been able to at least command some laps at the front. There he bobbles there off of turn number 2. And as everybody has single-filed once again, it's been that overarching mindset of just keeping this car alive with the extra power that is beneath the Chevrolets, Fords, and Toyotas, and, of course, the setup that has also trended very, very loose. Top 3 single file. Herb, Stepien, and Hendry, all 3 manufacturers represented as we come down to the 15 laps before the halfway mark. So telemetry tells us at least 1 more hour in this race. And that is, of course, if the field is able to stay green, but our near 5 yellow flags tonight have shown us otherwise. Plenty of them just single car accidents, but they've all been more than enough to take the drivers out of shape. There's that right front damage on the front end of the 88 car. So, of course, did stay out, and we know that at least that damage is fixable on his Chevrolet. We, of course, know with these higher horsepower cars and with these next-gen bodies, as aerodynamic as they are, when you're at these faster tracks, you may have to deal with a couple miles an hour shaved off on these main straightaways when you have damage like that, but Stepien didn't feel like it was enough to warrant giving up the track position, and still seems to be rather fast, dropping the Hammah Chevrolet as he pins to the inside of Hendry, or rather Erb in the top spot. Hendry now may be under fire in this fight for what is 4th place. Brandon Banks and Cedric Hunter, they've been almost inseparable all night long, but the two leaders in the championships now separated by just 5 points heading into tonight's first chase race from Chicagoland. Banks is able to break free, and he'll stay in front in this battle for 4th. Here comes Stepien from the inside. The damage not hampering his Chevrolet at all. Erb will pinch him down in 1 and 2, trying to rally through the bumps. And of course, this was the problem spot for Hendry as he made the pass for the lead in turn 3. Car got sent too deep. Car backed out of it, and then all of a sudden, the right rear tire went away, but Stepien has no such issues coming through turns 3 and 4. Stepien back to the control here at Chicagoland. Charlie Byer Photography onboard camera with the driver of the 88. Had those words earlier on under yellow that he's treating this race almost like a Rockingham. Going to be very different from the method he takes 1 week from tonight when the field actually takes on the rock. In the second race of the chase, that track fully repaved, and it was told to us at the beginning of the season they were going to use the brand new surface of Rockingham Speedway, although that track is still fun to drive for many and is considered a beloved venue by most on the stock car racing service. It's not the old 2012 scan from iRacing that makes drivers tremble just a little bit. That Rockingham Speedway course is so disastrous if you end up getting the steps wrong. Here comes Hunter trying to help his fellow Toyota on the outside of the racetrack. This run for 3rd to turn 1. Banks having finished top 6 in the race that Hunter achieved DTH victory laying out in Richmond last Sunday. And trying to capture what will be his 6th straight top 10 run. Oh, Hendry's loose. Brandon Banks is loose as well. Bounces off of Whittington. Hard into the outside wall goes Banks. Will there be a yellow flag? Another chase driver gets the hammer. Oh my goodness. And most importantly, we're going to stay green. One of the most consistent drivers of the season now has a torn-up race car under the green flag. And it was an ugly sequence off of turn 4. Banks letting Hunter get by in the battle for the top 5 spot. And it all starts once again with Justin Hendry as he bobbled loose off the wall in turn 4. Banks had to roll the car up, bounced off of Whittington, and then went right front first into the outside safer barrier. That is at least some suspension damage for the driver of the 5. And we don't know how much damage is on the right side of Jesse Whittington's car. Take the onboard look in turn 3. You see Erb was loose, Hendry was loose, Banks gets loose, bouncing off the Chevrolet. Does a great job at saving the car on the apron. But an unbelievable set of circumstances will most likely take Brandon Banks out of this event, although he's staying on the surface for now as we approach the final 6 laps before the halfway mark. It is just unheard of, the level of playoff trouble we've seen tonight in just one half of this race. And again, we go back to the sample size of Kansas Speedway earlier on this season. That race also had a high level of attrition, but it was a regular season affair. It was very early on in the calendar where with this new chase format, it is not a win and you're in scenario. It is just be consistent over the year. But now in the stretch of time where it matters the most to be good, make that at least 4 playoff drivers that have found some level of sustained damage before the halfway mark. Stephen Harlow had the first blow off turn 4. Alex Muscarella had the second. Garrett Walden had the third. He still runs back in this race from 12th. And now Banks, who still has yet to visit pit road, but this car is ailing as it bobbles through 3 and 4. You see the heavy front nose damage and what is definite suspension damage for the driver of the 5. The South Carolinian will just have to hold on by a thread and hope that he can at least grab enough points by finishing this race. As it stands right now, he still has a top 10 holding spot. He is 10th. So as long as he doesn't go more than 14 laps down in the night, he will be better than everyone else in this field. As Matthew Parasini, who got the lucky dog and went 1 lap down before one of our most recent yellow flags, he has now put himself behind the wall. So make that only 11 cars that are still out there and only 10 that are on the lead lap. Banks can still survive, although we just have to wait and see how this all unfolds. Herb under fire by Hendry. These 2 cars have been sideways. Again, Hendry into the outside wall. Almost takes Cedric Hunter with him. Through the middle is Jesse Whittington. What a drive by the 94 car to break through. But Hendry has been all over the place in this run alone. Oh my. That 85 car trying his best to get back to the top spot. And in every single attempt, he has broken free. And the car has gotten severely loose and did another great job to save it. But the last 2 times have almost been at the expense of other drivers. And now he's also holding on by a thread on right rear tires that are completely shot. As that has allowed Steven Stepien to stay up in front. He's now up ahead by 1.8 seconds, the largest gap we have seen by any race leader tonight. And trying like he's done in the 2 races that he won this season, Auto Club and at Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta, trying to dominate and at least lead over 100 laps to go for what is a 4th Droppin Hammah Cup Series career victory and 3rd in 2026. Charles Van Schuyck just getting around Justin Erb in the race for 2nd. As much like Justin Hendry, Erb has been all over the track. And then you look at someone like Jesse Whittington, who talked to us in the pre-race show and mentioned just kind of how clueless it was to go back into a 1.5 miler and not exactly know what the racing will be like, but seems to be an exact carbon copy of what we had our eyeballs on at America's Heartland in Kansas in early May. Seems to be the exact same race, just with more chase implications at the end of it all. Here's the Charlie Ryer Photography onboard camera with the driver of the 94 and Cypress Racing Academy's highest running Chevrolet, as his teammate Chuck Stevens runs a few positions behind him all the way back in P6. And again, we mentioned 2 drivers that we look at now in Whittington and in Stevens as this battle for 3rd continues on in turn 1. 2 drivers that made their way into this chase by just being good over the back end of the regular season, particularly Whittington, who started the season with a mid-pack run, and then from every race until at least the heart of the campaign past halfway, he improved on his position in every single race. Now, of course, that bounced around a lot more once he had back-to-back second-place runs and hasn't been able to get a race victory yet. But for a driver like Whittington, who pretty early on in the season was right at the cusp of that cut line in the bubble for top 12, and let alone in positions where he was out of contention for the chase, has just willed his way to a top 12 spot. And as long as the race continues, and with that scare off of turn number 4 from the spinning Brandon Banks, Whittington and his teammate are going to be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor, although one of their teammates has hurt badly tonight, and another one of their teammates in Zach Wilson has been out of this race for a little while. Garrett Walden is still going to be able to gain some drastic points. He will gain time on Matthew Parasini, and he just made that position up as Parasini has gone more than 14 laps adrift of the field. So Walden will now slot into the 11th spot. That is still pretty well, all things considered, the night that has gone on for now the 10th and 11th place cars that have severe damage on them. But for Whittington and Stevens' cause, it's a race of survival, and that's easily been what the drivers have kept in mind, as Hunter bobbled in 3 and 4, had to save it in 3 and 4. And here comes Stevens, the Simrat Market Chevrolet, moving through in the battle for 5th. Did a great job. Now make those Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolets nose to tail in the back end of this top 5 as we continue running on. And now what may be our longest green flag run of the night. Fingers crossed as this continues in the Hugger Oranges 300. Now, Hugger Oranges, for those who don't know, that's a trademark from the early NASCAR 2000s games, the EA Sports NASCAR titles from Chase for the Cup in 2005, maybe a bit of NASCAR 06, maybe NASCAR Thunder 2004. Some of those older console titles for NASCAR did have the Hugger Oranges sponsor on it, which was one of the fake sponsors that you could have on your race car in career mode. And so Droppin' the Hammah, as they've been very inspired by the early 2000s, a lot of these members of this series grew up watching the early aughts NASCAR, grew up as fans of Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, and many others. Steven Stepien, someone who has been sim racing since at least 2001. Back in the NR 2003 days, and even beyond that, in the early Papyrus titles of sim online racing, has watched not only NASCAR competition and NASCAR as a sport evolve into what it is these days, but to still have a group of guys and friends around to sim race around. Caution flag flies. Once again, it's Justin Hendry that happens to be spinning, this time with damage off the backstretch. So Hendry finally breaks out of what was a streak of saves on his Toyota Camry. And now the 85 with a bit of damage to start this next green flag run and bring out our most recent yellow flag past halfway. So Hendry had fallen all the way back to 9th as the several exchanges of a loose car hit him at the end. Car just snapped out in turn number 2. Oh, and a hard hit to the outside safer barrier. First time that Hendry picks up any significant amount of damage as this car just snapped out of place. And again, that's been the problem all night long. Just the right rear tire gets out of line. Car loses its grip. The downforce goes away. And you know, we mentioned with the next-gen car how things are so different from the early seasons. And even in the Sunoco Cup Series where they ran the Gen 6 Cup car, all of that downforce produced by mostly the bottom end of this machine. You don't have the mini strakes that you carry with the short track package we saw at Richmond and at Nashville Super Speedway in the last 2 weeks, and even in the road course package. It's the full-on diffuser, and the one thing that that bottom end of the car does not like to see is any sort of yaw angle from the machine. So Hendry breaks loose. Car ends up in damage. Here comes the run off of pit road. It's Charles Van Schaik who will take the lead commandingly on a 10-second pit stop. A beautiful 4-tire call for Charles Van Schaik will get him the lead. And the most dominant driver of the night thus far in Steven Stepien will take his time on pit lane to assess the damage on his Chevrolet. So it'll be the first time that Charles Van Schaik will lead some laps here at Chicagoland Speedway. Jesse Whittington, Cedric Hunter, Chuck Stevens, and Warren Kyle Keith in the rest of this top 5. Talk about rookie standouts, and we mentioned Whittington's drive to the top of this series to make it into the chase. Somebody who was practically considered in for the most part of the year has been this driver right here in the 23. Someone who, mostly like Brandon Banks, has not finished too many races outside of the top 10. Only 6 races of this 20-event season, including tonight, have been finishes outside of the top 10. Everything else has been consistent runs on a career best run of 2nd at the virtual Kentucky Speedway very early on in the season, a race that our good friend and KBRN member Francisco Bacallao had won in dominant fashion. And now we'll get ready for the restart on lap number 112 of this long 300-miler from Joliet, Illinois. It's the first time that we see Charles Van Schaik in the race lead, and it might be the first time as well we see Jesse Whittington have a front row starting spot for any given restart, including the first one. Pace truck makes its way down. The Hugger Oranges 300 continues through the Poet restart zone, and Van Schaik gets away swimmingly the inside, struggling to get going. Chuck Stevens will try to nab a second place spot over his teammate in turn 1. As they come around, teammates side by side. Here comes Cedric Hunter, 3 wide for second into turn 3, and he's got it. Beautiful dive, the highest we've seen the 8-time race winner tonight. And he'll take over second. Stepien has broken back into the top 5, trying to weave his way under Stevens in that race for 4th. And on the fresh tires, the Hunter is here. Cedric points to the inside, tries to plant fire in turn 3, looking for the race lead for the first time tonight. And a new race leader from Chicagoland. Cedric Hunter out in front. And just when you think the race for survival might take the most dominant driver of the year out of it, it's Cedric Hunter back in the race lead. Stepien getting the damage fixed. Brand new Chevrolet as his Camaro rolls through 1 and 2. And trying to beat Charles Van Schaik. He's been easily the fastest car, the most consistent driver, even on old tires in this race. And now trying to mark back where he made his territory known for a bulk of this run, as he follows in on the inside, and probably the slimmest use of the side draft on the front straightaway, and of course using a bit of that dirty air to tighten up the race car in what has otherwise been a very loose night for the Methuen, Massachusetts native. It's Massachusetts versus Canada. As they come around a turn 2, Van Schaik not gone, though, as they come off the second corner. Van Schaik holds tough, and the Ford Mustang able to clear once again for second. And again, every single waning lap on these drivers that are now on the same set of Goodyear Eagles, all of them on relatively fresh tires in this early run, are going to be able to possibly have these time differences move up and down if Van Schaik is able to hold off on Steven Stepien for at least long enough. That could allow Cedric Hunter to pull away. The largest gap we've seen tonight was one that Stepien held at nearly 2 full seconds. But most of the night has been filled with drivers from 3rd, 4th, 5th on back. They've been able to make moves all night long, just with how unpredictable this track has been. And, you know, we had a bulk of those tracks. Indianapolis, we had Pocono, tracks like New Hampshire, Nashville, and Richmond. Venues that, for the most part, is dominated by the dirty air, dominated by always high track position, helping you in your case. And if you just held your line, you were going to hold on to your track position. But with the way Chicagoland has planned out, with all of this tire wear, all of the different lanes being used, and of course the extra horsepower that has incented these cars to be a little more out of control, you've seen a much more wide open race. And it almost harkens back to the Las Vegases, to the Charlotte Motor Speedways, to the Kansases of the world, where it's been wide open survival racing for the most part. And referring to that Kansas race, the highest finisher of anyone in this race registered tonight is the driver that's running all the way back in 9th place, Warren Kyle Keith. A drive that really has not gone well for the St. Augustine, Florida native, a really sluggish restart. He's about 6 seconds adrift from Kevin Roy, who's now in the top 8. So it's been troublesome for the driver of the 24, hoping that a yellow flag can come out to save him for the most part. But the driver right behind Warren Kyle Keith in that Kansas race was Brandon Banks. The drivers that you're seeing at the front right now, Van Schaik having finished 7th in that affair after qualifying 2nd, and then Cedric Hunter, who had probably one of his most uncharacteristic nights ending up in a sizable crash and being pinned down in the field. Ended up finishing in the top 15 in 14th, which still not the worst finish in the world considering how big that field was that night. But for Hunter's case, now dominant he's been this year, it is uncharacteristic for the Canadian. And now the three, Hunter, Van Schaik, and Stepien, going to be the crucial race leaders as of right now. Now, Van Schaik has not let the race leader pull away by too much. He's rallied in within a car length. Van Schaik with a beautiful run off of turn 4, having a chance at the race leader, coming back to turn 1. But still, you look at this race, and a long way to go with the tires, and we've yet to flesh out a full long green flag run as Van Schaik makes use of the high lane. He'll take the top spot away from Cedric Hunter. Can he clear in turn 3? Answer is going to be a resounding yes. For just a split second, Van Schaik going to use the middle to try and rally through off of turn 4, and Van Schaik retakes the race lead in the Hugger Oranges 300. But again, we haven't seen these tires at the very end of their life. Kansas showed us maybe a bit more of the sample size that we get accustomed to seeing. You know, long green flag, 35, 45 lap runs, maybe all the way to 50. Drivers in this fuel setting can go up to around 50 to 55 laps on a tank of fuel at this 1.5 mile surface. But again, when Kansas came in, we had all that chaos go on because drivers were loose all over the place, and it just also didn't crucially allow for a strategy play. Now, it worked out in the end for drivers like Jaden Porter, ended up winning that race, just not a matter of being the best on tires over the run as the field continues to spread. However, still have that idea that, for the most part, if we end up in a long green flag stretch, could be wide open range for anyone to make a dire mistake, whether it takes him out of the event or not. And it's definitely going to be more than enough to create a yellow flag out there on the speedway. There's the battle for 7th place, easily decided. Justin Hendry in the 85 has decided to come down pit road. So his early race damage and his spin looks like he's going to take his car out of it. So Justin Hendry may be the newest DNF of the night. He has taken his car to pit road, did not search for his pit box. And so Justin Hendry may be the newest DNF tonight. And that moves Kevin Roy, who started this race pretty much at the very back. And the driver who came in as the last man into the chase, just on mere survival alone, is going to survive and most likely have a top 10 once this night is all said and done. That just tells you how uncharacteristic this race has been compared to practically every other race we've had this season. And your top 5 stands. Van Schaik, the race leader. Cedric Hunter running 2nd. Steven Stepien running in the middle of the top 5 in 3rd. Jesse Whittington carefully running in 4th, and his teammate in Charles Stevens came into tonight 11th in the chase standings. He wraps up the current top 5 tonight. Still running strong in what has been a attrition-filled Hugger Oranges 300 from the virtual Chicagoland Speedway. Don't go anywhere. We've got more coverage for you next on the KBueno Racing Network.
Experience the world's most legendary racing events with iRacing. iRacing special events allow any member to compete in full-length multiplayer races based on some of the biggest events in motorsports all year round. Compete in virtual endurance races, such as the Daytona 24, Spa 24, and the Nürburgring 24 Hours. Take on some of the toughest races on the NASCAR schedule, such as the Daytona 500. We have events from disciplines all across the racing world, from the Indianapolis 500 to the Chili Bowl, from the Bathurst 1000 to the Crandon Championship. Our endurance special events utilize iRacing's team feature, where members can sign up and race together on their own team, swapping drivers throughout the race. Other events utilize iRacing Super Sessions, where you're not only racing against those on track, but against every driver taking part. And as every race progresses, watch and feel the track change with progressive time of day, dynamic weather and rain, and dynamic track debris and surface changes. Take on your favorite discipline or try a brand new racing challenge with our biggest races of the year, the iRacing Special Events. Learn more at iracing.com/special-events.
And welcome back to coverage of the Hugger Oranges 300, race 20 of the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season, and the first race of the chase right here on the KBueno Racing Network. You were just on board with the current runner-up, but now fourth place driver in Charles Van Schuyck, chasing down the battle for the race lead. As Cedric Hunter got back around, he's now the race control driver. And Van Schuyck there just getting loose off of turn number 2, got him in trouble, and now has to walk back and try to get back into the podium spots. Jesse Whittington takes the position away, and Steven Stempian, who has been possibly the best driver all night long, other than now Cedric Hunter in this back leg of the race, a chance for those two to finally get back in line. Stempian was the faster car last time by, and the only driver in the top 5 to have run a lap inside the 30-second bracket, 30.947. For the driver of the 88, a 31 flat for the Canadian in Cedric Hunter, trying to chase down race win number 9 of 2026, while Stempian tries to chase down his 4th career and 3rd of season number 2. So this is now probably getting into one of our longest green flag runs of the night. Of course, all of them have been broken into by a yellow flag or some, including 1 or 2 more cars. We've had many chase drivers involved. If you are just tuning in, we had 12 chase drivers go in. They're going to take this route from Chicagoland all the way to the season finale in the Queen City at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the DTH Cup title. 4 of them, at least, involved in some kind of trouble that have taken them either out of this race or they are still out there on the speedway just in severe ailment. Stephen Harlow was the first driver to get bitten by the dust in a hard crash off turn 4, and then came Muscarella with a mistake from the race lead, then took him out of the entire event. Garrett Walden, the 43 car, went a hard hit into the barrier after he had a loose moment off of turn 2. He runs 13 laps down at the back end of the top 10, and Brandon Banks under green, a situation that did not result in a yellow flag. He also had a loose race car trying to avoid a near spinning Justin Hendry. He also had a slap to the outside safer barrier off turn 4, and now he has a heavily damaged HendrickCars.com Chevrolet. We also did get word under our green flag run before we went to the break that Justin Hendry, his 85 car, after many a scare, trying to save his machine, did a great job of holding on many times. He has now put his car to pit road and out of the affair. So that only leaves 10 cars out there on the speedway with only 8 on the lead lap. It has been that kind of race. And with all that in mind, perhaps this will be the longest green flag run that we have, not because of the drivers not having sketchy race cars. It may just be the fact that there are no other cars around practically anyone. They have all separated. It's 0.6 of a second from the race leader to the second place car you're focused on now, then another 0.6 back to the third place runner, Jesse Whittington, And then another 7/10 back to the driver who was running in the runner-up spot and then bled some after that mistake off turn 2 in Charles Van Schaik. 6/10 back, and then it's another 2 full seconds to Justin Erb. Another 2.2 seconds adrift is Kevin Roy. Another 7.5 seconds go back to the 84 of Chuck Stevens. And Warren Kyle Keith, who is another 7 seconds back of that car. Now the last driver on the lead lap. So this field has significantly thinned through. And with 60 laps to go in basically the back leg on what is practically one more pit stop to go until the drivers can consider themselves making it to the checkered flag. Now, of course, with all of those yellows we had in the first half, you ask yourself how many of these tire sets do these drivers have left? They were given 4 extra, but when this race started, including the one that they began the race on, drivers had been to pit road at least more than 3 times in this race. Hunter has been on pit road at least 5 times tonight. And his last pit stop around 32 laps ago with everyone else was a 4-tire stop, 10.3 seconds. And the same goes for Stepien, for Whittington, Van Schaik, and basically everyone you see that is still on the racetrack right now. They came down pit road, got their service, and now you almost think to yourself, how many sets are available? Now, if there's only 1 set left, then so be it. Drivers may have to use the last one, but you'll often see teams and drivers strategically try to use that final limited set as a just-in-case tire mark. So if you have a late race restart inside mostly 10 to 15 laps to go, if you have an overtime restart and you have to visit pit road, then you have the ability to come in for fresh tires. And in races like these where tire wear has mattered so significantly, it might be the beneficiary to come down pit road in a late race situation like that. Now, of course, we're not deep into the run yet to understand how many tire sets the drivers officially have left, but that's part of the strategy that comes in with limited tire sets added to the sim a few years ago, and now makes you a little more smarter on how many tires you want to use, and of course when you want to use them, given the point of the race. And obviously the luck that comes with having the right tire set at the right time, but also could be the unluckiness of staying out, and then you have the oldest tire set of the field, and then you have to deal with a car that naturally is going to be worse on performance because you have less grip. Going to be a question mark for everyone to figure out as this race continues on. Now, remember, we talked about Stepien having the faster car out of the top running 2. He has now leveled off and actually slower than the race leader. 31.27 for Stepien. It was a 31 flat for Cedric Hunter. Now, of course, we've seen both of these cars a bit sideways off of their mark, and the right rear is kicking out a little bit too much off of either turn 2 or turn 4. But that last crucial mistake by Stepien. Looks like the tires are officially starting to go away for the Methuen, Massachusetts native, and hitting a big bump in 3 and 4, gathering the race car off of 4. Thin point for Jesse Whittington to sneak on by, and Whittington takes over second before turn 1. Now here comes Van Schaik. It's been a race all about limiting mistakes. And in this clean air, tough air, sideways is Van Schaik. Another save for the Go Racing Diecast 23. And we're going to stay green. But the first time in a long time that we've seen these kind of mistakes from the drivers. It has been unbelievable tonight. And could that, with at least 54 laps to go, mark the run that comes near to an end? And now Jesse Whittington falls 2 seconds adrift from the race leader. All of those mistakes have resulted in practically a big-time switch, where now Hunter can just at least settle down a little bit, be a little more comfortable in his run. As we watch the second-place car of Jesse Whittington. Last time he captured a top-3 run, you have to go back to the third-place finish on August 2nd at Nashville Superspeedway, the Music City. We talked to him then. Obviously a mindset knowing that he was going to make the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase, just given his overall performances. But on what is 4 podiums this season for Whittington, it has been a season to remember for the Cypress Racing Academy number 94, and still missing a checkbox to be included. That is, of course, a race victory and has been very close multiple times, but chasing down what is basically the most dominant driver of the series. It's going to be a tall order for the 94. We saw him pick up right front damage earlier on tonight, got a piece of the wall there in 3, but a driver that did have the bounce off from Brandon Banks' mistake off turn 4 and has not come down pit road, nor has taken the time to repair his Chevrolet. Feels that seems to be okay for now, and we know that right front tire hits can be detrimental to the handling of the race car in most normal circumstances where it usually creates a significant understeer effect. I think with the way this race has gone right now, you probably prefer an understeery race car, at least a little bit compared to everyone else, just given how brake-free loose this cars have been tonight. And Whittington trying to capture another top 5 on what has been, so far, 8 on the season in 2026. And with the way tonight is gone, a chance to at least get a foot over every single other driver and be at least second or at least in the top 5 in the chase standings heading into Rockingham in North Carolina next Sunday night. He continues to run the boards on the high side. Stempien is still within a grasp, at least 2 to 3 car lengths that separate the 2 Chevrolets, but all in a matter of falling right behind Cedric Hunter, who has easily stepped down front. He's settled into his groove. He's run the bottom the last few laps, and this Hello Kitty Toyota Camry in a spot to lead our first trips under green on pit road. Now, of course, that is if the drivers elect to do so. They are within the window to be able to make it on fuel until the end, but given the race that we've had so far tonight, it's been more so about saving tires. Oh, here comes Whittington on the pit road. The first caller, the first driver in, is going to be this 94 machine. Hopes that the undercut with 48 laps to go is going to be more than enough to get him out in front. Going to try to do something different. Cedric Hunter, Stempien, and the lot are going to stay out this time by. And now we wait to see if anyone else comes down pit road. Of course, we know fuel is not going to be a concern, but it's 43 laps on a set of Goodyear Eagles. Now, you can go a little bit longer, but if this car feels a little bit too out of control. Oh, Stempien is sideways. Saves it off turn 4. Beautiful job by Stempien to hold on to the race car. Scratch of the face. Another huge scare for the driver of the 88. And that is right as Jesse Whittington is coming off of pit road. He will merge back at least in 5th. And now we wait for anyone else to take a trip onto pit road and continue to kick off this green flag pit road cycle. Van Schaik runs off turn 4. He's now 4.5 seconds away, plus some, to the race leader in Cedric Hunter. And it has easily become a hard race to consume. Now here comes Stempien. Has had enough of this long green flag run. He's in on pit road. Final pit stop with 46 laps to go. And now here's the race leader on the pit road for what could be the final time tonight on lap number 45 of his green flag stint with 45 laps to go at the stripe. Cedric is going to pin this one right in the middle. As Charles Van Schaik will lead another lap, he'll stay out. Kevin Roy as well will stay out until the racing surface. Again, Whittington and Stempien are going to be those net position cars, going to have the net race lead potentially if they're able to get around the 45 car. They are rolling through 3 and 4 right now, so there may be enough time for Hunter to be able to gather enough speed and still be able to be ahead. There is Chuck Van Schaik coming around to turn 1, so there is going to be a while before you get to Jesse Whittington, who's right there on the inside of 1 and 2. It's going to be another little while before Steven Stempien comes around, so Whittington breaks on free. That is the battle for the net race lead, and it may be a hefty margin in the favor of Jesse Whittington. It's at least a 1 to 2 lap difference between the two cars. So we'll keep an eye on whether Hunter has that much better of a race car entering this final run. Justin Erb is on pit road now. And Chuck Van Schaik, Kevin Roy, Charles Stevens, and Warren Kyle Keith are going to stretch this out just a little bit longer in hopes that they get a prayer of a yellow or they get enough of a green flag run to come down pit road and have the freshest set of Goodyear Eagles. Here comes Kevin Roy, the 22 car in and out. And it will be 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles and fuel for Roy that will help Jesse Whittington get around. He is now a few car lengths above Cedric Hunter. That gap sits at around 1.4 seconds. But of course, that could change. There is the tires in benefit of the 45, who's been the best long run car tonight. Although just a matter of time. Stepien has also gone around. He is 4.3 seconds adrift from Cedric Hunter. So that battle for net position number 2 may not be as close as we thought it was going to be by the end of this run. So Van Schaik will stay out. The other lap, it's Chuck Stevens and Warren Kyle Keith that have yet to come in on pit road. They at least have to make that final stop. And again, every single person in this top 10, everybody on the lead lap, they came down pit road on the most recent yellow flag, which is now more than 45 laps ago. Everyone came down. They all got 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles, and there's been no difference. So it hasn't been a case of drivers saving maybe more fuel than others and maybe being on a longer pit call than others before this green flag stretch started. They've all been on the same playing field. Now is the first chance for them to truly alternate. And we know drivers like Warren Kyle Keith, we know he's going to take a risk, especially with the way his race is gone at the back half. And we know with Charles Van Schaik, he wants nothing more than to stay up in front with a chance of the race victory. But this may be the calling card off of turn 2. Inside went Whittington to unlap himself. Same deal for Cedric Hunter, who gets around. That gap at around 3 car lengths, so that could be the change in hand for the net race lead tonight. Van Schaik stays out the extra lap. Stevens and Keith appear not to be making any drastic moves, so they continue to stay out. With 39 laps to go, what is now going to be the toughest test of longevity on a set of Goodyear Eagles. On board with Hunter coming back to turn 3 as he chases down the net race leader. Sun coming down slowly here in Joliet, Illinois, but the heat is turning up. Hunter, who's led 36 laps tonight, has a chance to break right back in front as the top 3 haven't made their calls until now. Charles Van Schaik is in on pit road. Warren Kyle Keith, there is the race leader right in front. So this could be a chance at things to change as Chuck Stevens is still up in front. And here comes Hunter for the net race lead to the inside and clear in turn 1. Oh, but he bobbled as he got a piece of the apron. This fight is not done yet. Rattling from the outside is Whittington, and he takes control. And just when you thought the 45 car would have a run, the Chicagoland asphalt bites him again. Keith is in the wall. This is the battle for second. Whittington ends up through. The top 2 have not come in on pit road yet. On the longest run we've seen tonight, 54 laps by the Floridian in Stevens. And he's going to hold out hope that either a lucky yellow flies or he'll have to come down pit road. But most importantly, understanding the gaps that are at play, he will not have the race lead when we come back around. That is to be said that this fight may be the best that we see all night long. Hunter trying to break free into history while Whittington tries to win his first. On board with Whittington. And now Whittington's loose, but Hunter's in the wall. Got a piece of the dirty air coming off of turn 4, but he's not done yet. Again, he's got the fresher tires by 3 laps, so it may be a matter of time if Whittington doesn't continue to remain on all 10 toes. Hunter is still there. Nose to tail to turn 3. Hunter again peeking under through the bumps. Hunter's to the inside. Hunter has a nose inside still. And they're going to be door to door coming to the start-finish line. 33 laps to go. Net race lead. And it's Hunter again to the inside. Cedric Hunter. As we see Chuck Stevens wait for pit road, is going to take the net race lead. Can Whittington respond? Took a little while, but Hunter is there, and he's always inevitable. Not to be fired with. And someone that is trying to secure his 10th career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series win and 9th of 2026 alone. It's been that kind of season. The Canadian has dominated all fronts. And in a race where he qualified at the back end of everyone that put down at least one qualifying time tonight, is now 31 laps away from the all-time wins leader. Sun pokes out almost in a way to clear for a driver who is seeing sunlight for the first time in a little while. And the driver who has shined all season long is going to come in with a 0.3 of a second gap as they wait for this man right here, the only driver left other than Warren Kyle Keith that has not hit pit road in this final run. Oh, and the yellow comes out. This will help Chuck Stevens in the lead, and it's Keith in trouble off turn 4. Well, this race has been blown on its head. And it's severe damage for Warren Kyle Keith. His race is over. The dagger is settled in. Make that another list. Another addition to the list of playoff drivers that have been involved in at least one sizable crash tonight. And this time it strikes the Florida native of Warren Kyle Keith. On 58 lap old tires, something had to give, and it gave in the middle of the apex in turn 3. Overcorrected into the outside wall, and his car became toast. Listen in. Had a fast race car earlier on tonight, and then the race just shifted on its head for him, and the 24 of Warren Kyle Keith is involved in this latest spill, so that will take out another heavy hitter in this chase standing run, as Charles Stevens, on the oldest set of tires of anyone in the field, has a blessing in disguise. Stevens on pit road, and he's joined by many of the others that were running in the net race position for the lead. Jesse Whittington is in, Cedric Hunter is in, Steven Stepien, Justin Erb, and Kevin Roy. The only driver to stay out, Charles Van Schaik in the 23. As Hunter will win the race off pit lane, Stepien will fight Whittington to the tooth and nail. And they now stand with a 9-lap difference on tires compared to this man right here, who is going to hold out hope inside 30 laps to go to try and win his first career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series race. So as we reset on our most recent yellow flag of the night, lights will come off from the iRacing official pace truck, and it's Charles Van Schaik choosing the outside lane for this green flag restart with at least 26 laps to go. Cedric Hunter, the first driver off pit road on a fresh set of Goodyear Eagles, all of them at least taking 4 tires on the pit stop, 9 laps better than the leader. He's going to be on the inside of row number 1. Steven Stepien and Jesse Whittington, new life breathed into their run. It was almost looking certifyingly like a Cedric Hunter runaway on long green flag strategy. It may not be that case. There may still be some chaos by the end. Remember, Chuck Stevens had come down pit road from the race lead. He has given that up. He's now back in 6th place, with the outside driver being Justin Erb, who's in this top 5. Kevin Roy and Garrett Walden are now the only other cars on the racetrack, as Warren Kyle Keith ended up in this sizable racing accident. He's now more than 4 laps down on the speedway. So let's do it for what could be the final time, assuming all goes well, here in this Hugger Oranges 300 from Chicagoland Speedway. Van Schaik, Hunter through the Poe restart zone, and it's Van Schaik that gets out first. The bobble from Hunter breathes open the space for Steven Stepien to make a run at it for second in turn 1. Hunter's loose. Here comes Stepien. 3 wide for the lead in turn 3. Hunter through the middle. Cedric Hunter is not to be denied. Hunter takes the race lead back at Chicagoland. And now it's a new Charger. Stepien with this final 25-lap stretch gets reeled in by Van Schaik. There too. In second. Whittington and Erb holding back in 4th and 5th. Van Schaik trying to play the defense, shut the door on Stepien's DTH Chevrolet as Hunter tries to pull away. Final 25 here from Joliet, Illinois. And in unbelievable circumstances, Cedric Hunter can hold on for the win here at Chicagoland. 24 laps to go. Whittington falls back. Justin Erb emerges in the foreground, and the fight for second is not over yet. Stepien trying to hunt down Van Schaik. The onboard look shows a man on a mission coming back to turn 3, trying to take back the lead. And here comes Erb to the inside. Cannot imagine the nerves behind this driver right here as he watches the fight for the lead drift away from him. Justin Erb loose on the inside, trying to make a move at him for 3rd. And here comes Whittington, slingshot underneath. Battle for 4th as they come back to 3. Stepien has a chance to breathe, a bit of elbow room coming into turn 4. But will that bring him enough time to settle in and try and beat Cedric Hunter at his own game? Smoke on the front straightaway. No trouble, will stay okay. Hunter up by at least 0.3 of a second on Van Schaik, who's now a few tenths up the road, at least a car length from Stepien in 3rd. And it might just be the spell ender for Steven Stepien and Charles Van Schaik to be able to make a move. Hunter still the faster car out of anyone in the top 5. On board with Erb running 4th as he tries to chase down the league owner. Someone who's used the high side all night long. Just looking for every last bit of advantage he can find in a race that has been all about just surviving. Looking for what is his 3rd consecutive top 10 if he can hold on to 4th. And what will be his first top 5 of the entire season for the driver of the 20. So he falls back, cannot quite get to Steven Stepien, who was pulled away. And still, the fight for the lead remains up in arms, but Cedric Hunter remains out in front. Calm, consistent, and with 19 laps to go to 18. Van Schaik has found his way to weave on by. He's a 10th faster that last time by. And so Van Schaik still has a bit of breath left in him. He can still make this a proper fight for the race win. They'll come across to 17 laps to go. Remember, this is still a sizable long green flag run. Drivers went at least 45 laps on a stint. And they'll go well under that in this final run. Can Van Schaik get there? Loose moment by Van Schaik. Hunter stays in front. And this top 5 have officially settled out. They have pulled away from everyone else on the racetrack. With, mind you, only 7 cars that run this on the lead lap. Kevin Roy is the final driver on the lead group, as he runs 3.2 seconds adrift from Charles Stevens, who's at the back end of this main pack. And then Garrett Walden and Warren Kyle Keith, who technically are the only other cars on the racetrack, although Keith remains on pit road with a heavily damaged race car. He will just hold this one out until the very end. Even if he's not able to fully repair that car, he's still going to try and scrap all of the points that are available there on what has been probably the most disastrous race for a bulk of the playoff field and the chase field running for the championship as they try to refocus onto the Rock 1 week from tonight in North Carolina. But this one's still not done yet. Van Schaik is still approaching on Hunter for the lead. He's yet to get closer than a full car length. That last time by, still a bit faster by another 10. And he has found his way to get right into the thick of things. Stepien is not too far behind either. If these two get close together, Stepien and Justin Erb can make a run at it for the runner-up spot or the top spot, if it comes down to that kind of last lap effort. Van Schaik closer than he's ever been on this run. He is still a 10 faster than the leader. And now trying to use the high side. We've seen Hunter get loose a couple of times on the inside tonight, but Van Schaik bobbles loose off too, hoping he can stay connected through the Chicagoland sunset. It'll be 12 laps to go. Can Van Schaik do anything to get around? Battle for third underway as well. Justin Erb trying to get closer to Steven Stepien. And that continues to weave back and forth, a seesawing affair on time difference. Van Schaik had a wonderful 1 and 2, just couldn't close it out. And Hunter remains out in front. There's Erb to the inside for third. And all won't do it for Erb, who falls back. Van Schaik falls another 10th. And the balance goes back in the favor of the 45 with 10 laps to go here from Chicagoland on a thinned out field. Cedric Hunter has not gone more than 2 races without a race victory in this entire season. His 6th win of the year, which capped off a 3-in-a-row trifecta to make it 6 wins on the year at Phoenix. Then got broken up by 2 races where he didn't win, at Daytona and at Sonoma, where his teammate Zachary Hall ended up winning the road course. But then Hunter found his way back to the victory circle at Indianapolis. And then it took another 2 races, Banks winning at New Hampshire and Stephen Harlow getting his first career win at Nashville Superspeedway for Hunter to get back to victory lane in the regular season finale at Richmond. It has been a season to remember. And he's trying to continue the memorable year up until the chase with a chance to be the outright leader coming in and the outright leader heading out into Rockingham next Sunday. But he still has at least 7.5 laps left to complete with a 2-car length gap to Charles Van Schaik. No margin for error for even the most dominant driver of the season. Here's the battle for 4th. As it continues on, here's Justin Erb and Jesse Whittington. Saw Justin Erb trying to creep up on Stepien in the battle for 3rd. That took a little while to get around. Finally, Stepien was able to cement his place. And now it's Whittington that's attempting to make a run at it. Of course, all of them, these chase drivers, they understand the top 10 is on the card. So they understand even if they can gain a little more now, they are still on an overall gain compared to all of those that have fallen short tonight. With Muscarella, Harlow, Banks, Keith, and Walden mostly out of contention in this race. It has allowed them to lead laps. It has allowed them to stay up in front. And Charles Van Schaik, with what will match his career best run in his first ever DTH Cup season. Last time he finished second, we mentioned, was back at Kentucky, the Bluegrass State, in late March. And here he is, just clinging to whatever advantage he can find, although he's 0.07 of a second short of Cedric Hunter's last lap. 5 laps to go at the start-finish line. And in a race that has been all about just keeping 4 tires on pavement and not bobbling, not making a single mistake, and seeing all of the fellow comrades go south and end up in crash after crash after crash, many of them just by themselves. It's this short but fiery group of drivers that are going to hope that they can keep themselves alive at any cost in this Hugger Oranges 300. It's Hunter the leader, Van Schaik behind him, Stepien running 3rd, Justin Erb and Jesse Whittington the current top 5, and Chuck Stevens now the last driver in the group, with Kevin Roy sure to lock up 7th after coming into tonight last in the chase standings. Is going to walk away with at least a few positions gained after this is all said and done. And it's now down to the final 4.5 miles here in Joliet. Gap between the leaders flirts with 0.3. 0.2 was a look at 1 car length a few laps ago. But it's 3 miles to go for Cedric Hunter. Finds 2 left. 1 more in this race is official. Van Schaik may be too far down. He's 0.6 of a second shy, lost a ton of time off of turn 2. And through the bumps in 3 and 4 for the penultimate time, this race will be official from Chicagoland Speedway. White flag in Joliet. Cedric Hunter qualified this race deep in the top 10. He hung around in the back half of the top 10 for the night, saw all of the other chase drivers found trouble, and when it matters the most, the odds-on favorite to win the title continues his cemented status at the front. And off turn 4, Hunter wins back-to-back and wins the first chase race at Chicagoland. And with that win, Cedric Hunter is in a league of his own. The winningest driver in series history with 10, as he barely eclipses Lawson Peel. Entered tonight right on the cusp of that potential historic mark. And with a season unlike any other, it's a very familiar sight for Cedric Hunter dropping the Hammah victory lane. his first in the chase. And now all alone at the top of the DTH winning world. What was a night all about attrition, survival, mayhem, and chase drivers in drama. The series always goes back to this man right here, doing a backwards burnout in Chicagoland. Cedric Hunter, the winner for the 9th time in 2026. What a night. What a dramatic ending. And after all is said and done, Cedric Hunter, the race winner, after 200 complete laps and a final green flag run for the ages. Cedric Hunter, the race winner, he dominates the end of the event and wins the first race of the 2026 chase, with Charles Van Schaik right behind, matches his career best runner-up spot. With Steven Stampian, a strong card tonight for the 88, survived a bit of mayhem of his own, and caps off the top 3 tonight. Justin Erb ends up in the top 4. Jesse Whittington to close out the top 5 for the Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolet. Charles Stevens ends up in 6th with Kevin Roy, the last driver, on the lead lap. He will gain a ton of points. He came into tonight last in the playoffs, or in the chase rather, and now will possibly gain a few spots off of that. Garrett Walden came back onto the racetrack after a huge crash for him. The 43 car is the first driver a lap down or more, 13 laps adrift in 8th. Warren Kyle Keith had a cementing last crash that brought out the final yellow of the event. He still ends up with a top 9, and Brandon Banks crashed a long time ago under green. It stayed green, got his damage fixed, ended up behind the wall. He's in the garage, but he still comes away with another top 10. Justin Hendry in the 85 had some laps up at the front, had many loose moments, and then eventually ended up in a spill on the backstretch and called it quits. 77 laps down in 11th. Matthew Parasini also with damage called it quits. He's 12th. Zach Wilson in 13th. Alex Muscarella and Stephen Harlow, the hardest hits of the night early, as them both had chances at the front. Very good cars to start, and then much bad luck at the end of it. And Richard Swavely signed up for the session but missed out on what was the 16 car field to register for tonight's race from Chicagoland. So another Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series race goes by, and it is another race victory for the driver of the 45 in Cedric Hunter. Welcome into our KBRN post-race show as we join a driver who has been with us so many times at this point. I think we may have to call you our analyst in the booth at this point. Cedric, another race victory. Most importantly, the first one of the chase, so you keep the standings lead. But another important footnote, you are now the all-time winningest driver in Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series history. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's so cool. Just been racing really hard over the last 2 seasons to just get wins, and this season's come a little bit easier. We've had these cars a little more figured out, I think, this season, and it helps that so some of the guys that were really competitive last year aren't racing, so that makes it a little bit easier. Really cool to say, I guess, all-time wins leader, which is awesome. And I guess now, am I tied, I think, with like most wins in a season?
You are,
With
yes.
Peel. Okay, awesome. So then hopefully I'll get another one at some point during the chase, and we can also knock that record off. So it's been, really fun. Tonight was really fun. The car was really hard to drive. My wrist is so sore just from gripping the wheel so hard. And then kind of figured out in the back half of the race by accident. I just didn't realize when I was cycling through my boxes, I'd accidentally unchecked my my refuel little bar, I guess. I'd accidentally turned that off during one of the pit stops, and so I had just enough fuel to make it to where I was comfortable to pit, and the car drove great from that point on. So I short fueled it on the last stop, and the second to last stop, and the third to last stop. Like it just worked out perfectly. The car wasn't as crazy on the exits afterwards, so made for good racing at the end where I didn't have to worry about dying every lap. I was able to kind of move around, aero block Charles, which he was on a burner there on those, I guess, couple lap older tires, and the last run of the race. That was a lot of fun.
So tell me again about this chase to continue to dial up this car's handling, and that seemed to be the problem for everyone, including yourself. A lot of chase drivers also collected in incidents that is going to desperately change up the chase picture. But for you, with the field, having not run a proper 1.5 miler in this intermediate power package since early May at Kansas, did it almost feel like a shock coming back to the senses, or did it feel like the expected race to happen, knowing the track conditions and knowing the time you had in practice?
Yeah, I mean, my time at practice and in qualifying was really, really bad. I didn't have the short run figured out, and Kansas was kind of the same way. When the car's really hard to drive and really loose on these mile and a halves, I've seen other cars I'm normally pretty good, but for the next gen's just a handful. If you kind of get a yacht out a little bit, it could snap very, very easily, which is I think what happened to me at Kansas. I just spun myself out, and I think I did it once or twice, and it was a rough race. So in practice, running my first few laps, I realized it was kind of the same as Kansas, and I figured it was going to be a long night, and to be honest, it was. Like we qualified last in the field, and then we really didn't make any progress for the first 40 laps or so until like you said, just guys had bad luck and got caught up in stuff, which was very fortunate, I guess, for me in the chase. And I'm looking at guys like Brandon and Warren um, and Harlow and a bunch of other guys that got caught up in stuff that is definitely going to help with the points. So it'll be fun heading into the rest of this chase. Obviously, it's a long one. I think there's still 5 or 6 races left, so anything can happen.
Most importantly, though, you are the points leader coming in. You are the points leader heading out of Chicagoland with this victory. Rockingham next, a first and only appearance for that track on the schedule in a new venue overall for the series. And then Homestead, Miami right after. Seems like intermediate, almost short track intermediate for the first 3. What do you make of those tracks, and how do you continue this consistent run through the chase for the title?
Yeah, I haven't ran Rockingham since it's been updated, and I wasn't good at all at the old one. So, we'll see. I guess I'll definitely just show up with 20 minutes left in practice next week, run a couple laps, and you know, just hope that I have it somewhat figured out before the green flag. And I don't know what the laps are, but I'm sure it's gonna be a pretty long one. It's gonna be a grueling race. So, we have a lot of time to figure it out mid race, and then. Um, and Homestead was a race that we almost won the race and the championship last season. So I think we'd be pretty good there. Obviously, the cars seem to drive a little bit differently on the mile and a halves, a little bit more of a handful. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And fingers crossed that we have more guys that actually show up for the rest of the chase.
Well, Cedric, another race victory. You're very used to it now. 9 on the season, and still some space in the chase to get some more on the chase for the title. Before we let you go on this victory here in the Hugger Oranges 300, anyone you want to give a shout out to and thank for tonight's win?
Yeah, man. Huge shout out to the admins for making all this happen. The drivers that showed up, and it was good racing. Like it was hard fought racing, and I think that other than guys kind of snapping loose and stuff like that, like the racing was really good tonight, and that stuff kind of happens. So shout out to you. These races are long, especially when we have a lower car count, so I can't imagine being in your position. But um, I'm gonna, as I always do, I'm gonna go back and rewatch this race probably tomorrow when I'm at work. So it should be a good listen. You always do a great job, and yeah. Also shout out, I guess, to everyone tuning in and supporting this league from a spectator point of view.
Well, Cedric, as always, we like talking to you. We've talked to you a lot this season, and I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we talk to you before the season is over. Congratulations on the win here from Chicagoland. Enjoy the dub. Enjoy the resting arms now after a hard night of work, and we'll see you at Rockingham with the field next week for the chase.
I appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
Cedric Hunter had to work hard for the race victory, but does it in style over Charles Van Schaik in a long green flag run until the end. We are joined by Chuck Van Schaik now. Chuck, matching your career best second place finish. Last time we saw you do that was out in Kentucky. It happens in another 1.5 miler, but you and the rest of the field hanging on for dear life in that final run. What did it feel like from your end?
It was fun. I figured I'd stay. I was keeping track because it was such a small field of tires, who was taking what.
So I ran long the last one, and the caution came out, so I stayed out. I think I had 9 laps on the tires. I felt it was better for me the way I was running once the tires came in, because a couple times where I restarted first, I gave up the lead, then I came back, took the lead back, and it's fresh tires was not my friend, to say the least. So it just sucks. Second to the last lap, I was waiting to do it because I know he was defending the bottom, and then he was aero blocking a little bit, and because I think I was 4 tenths or five, almost a half a second faster the last lap when I hit it, but the second to the last lap, I tried, riding the wall there, getting up against the wall, running the boards, and got into the wall a little bit. So I kind of killed that. But all in all, it was fun. Sucks the car count's low. It's been going down every week. It's going to be tough if the car counts stay this way to overtake Cedric. That was another reason why I said, you know what, let me stay out, because worst case scenario, I finished 7th. That's how many cars were on the lead lap, and it's a little frustrating with the car count, but all in all, it was fun. I was getting knocked around a little bit and dumped, and I lost control a couple times, and it was fun.
So let's discuss again the overarching conditions of this car, being sideways almost at all times, other chase drivers finding trouble, and like you said, probably the worst you could be is 7th in that final green flag run. How beneficiary was that for you, or beneficial was for you, especially in that late end run where you understood maybe the damage wasn't going to be that much done if there had been almost the worst case scenario in that last run, and how you feel confidence-wise going into Rockingham with more points on your belt and possibly some more points positions gained in the chase as a result?
I mean, Rockingham, I think I've only run that twice ever, and never in a cup car, so that should be fun. Yeah, I mean, I saw 7 people in the lead lap. I was going to save a set of tires. I think there was 29 laps left. I was hoping maybe for a top 4, holding on for a top 4, but I just kept hitting that second and third lane and getting in the gas early and dirt tracking it around, and it stayed under me for 29 laps. But I was hoping for like a caution, about 15, 12 to 16 laps in, and then I've been able to throw tires on, start in 7th, and try to. Then I would have just ripped the wall and use those tires to hopefully have gotten a win. But I mean, I guess this is best case scenario for the way it played out, finishing second, because there was no shot of winning the race staying out. It was just a different play. But but like I said, best case scenario for the way it played out. But I had a backup plan if caution was thrown.
So a second place finish, your third podium run of the year in your rookie campaign, points gained tenfold, and a great position going into Rockingham. Before we let you go, Chuck, on this great finish tonight from Joliet, Illinois, anybody you want to give a shout out to and thank for the race?
Yeah, the admins for putting up with the adult children in the league. You for the great broadcast. Clean race in there by Cedric, and I forget who else I was around, even Steven, and sucks for some of the other guys that were in the chase that just got caught up or just lost it and couldn't correct it. We were all doing it. And then to my company, Goat Racing Diecast. I had goatracingdiecast.com. Check out the website. We do lives every Sunday. We have customs, apparel, new diecast, old diecast. We have everything, and we do sponsors and everything. I have about 8 drivers in the fold. Try to get some of them to come out, but I don't know if it might be too late, and it's a different setup with the horsepower and stuff. I don't want anyone to have their race ruined, but I'll talk to the admin and see. I got about 5 or 6 guys I can bring. I don't know if it would be fair though, because God forbid something happened, they would think it was a conspiracy. But yeah, that's it. And then anyone that's watching, I know it's a long race, low car count, so.
Well, Charles, a fantastic effort tonight here from Chicagoland, and as always, we always see you, and we appreciate you being on the track and talking to you as always. Best of luck as we move on to the chase, and congratulations on the second once again.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Chuck Van Schiken is number 23. Go Racing Diecast Ford Mustang Dark Horse closes out our top 2. And we get a chance to talk with the driver who ends up on the last step of the podium. Steven Stepien caps off a wild race here from Chicagoland Speedway and joins us now after it's all said and done. Steven, what a night. I mean, you had right front damage at one point. You were in the race lead. You were chasing down. There was almost a strategy race, and then it just came down to a long green flag run at the end. If you had one word to describe the way this race unfolded for you, what would you use to describe it?
Crap.
All right, seems like possible word, especially with the handling of this car. And tell us how it felt. I mean, again, very loose on the long run, very loose overall. You had the chance to push into the top 2 by the end of it with a hard charging run. You had damage. Were you able to fix that, try to get back mentally into this game, and what you felt maybe was on that long green flag run that you needed just a little bit more to catch up on some few spots?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the damage was gonna hurt me more than it helped, and I opted not to pit. I mean, I was kind of doing that all race. Those guys were going in, I was staying out, and I just didn't think it was that bad until somebody told me it was that bad. But then, I mean, I gapped the field for a little bit. I got out to a 2-second lead, so it was helping the stability of the car because it was so loose. I could actually, I was able to drive off pretty well, unlike before where you were kind of babying it and off the corner and try to take care of the rears. So that helped. And then, obviously that caution came out after, that 30 or 40 lap run. I was hoping we were just going to go green there once I got out to a big lead on everybody, but, it wasn't the case. So I fixed the damage. I knew I was going to be last, which, I mean, with the car count, it's not a terrible thing, I guess. But the track just changed, Kenneth. It as soon as the shadows started coming out, and you again some shadows in 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, some clouds were coming out. The track was cooling off. I mean, the car completely changed. It just went from, being on edge to plow in 1 and 2 at least. And I think that was my biggest struggle in the last 30 laps there. Just couldn't do what I was doing before, and then tried going to the top. I just wasn't comfortable up at the top. So I wish the clouds never came and the track stayed the way it was. Maybe I would have got a win, but can't change Mother Nature, I guess,
But of course, there is the changing of the guards, at least a little bit in the chase standings. You came in locked in for the back end of the regular season, and now I'm assuming with the way this race went for a lot of other chase competitors alongside yourself, that you're going to be able to gain a lot more heading into Rockingham, which will be a series first next Sunday. So is there any way you feel a bit of momentum even after the emotions of this finish to carry on? And does it still feel like a benefit to be out there, finish the race when a lot of other chase drivers had trouble tonight?
Oh yeah, I mean that was priority number one, was just trying to finish the race and have a good finish. Obviously, because so many people had issues, right? You didn't want to end up DNFing this race with how many people went out, because you would have just been right where they were. So that was good. I was glad I was able to finish it top 3. I felt like I had the car. I was doing everything right. And I just can't figure out the car for once in my sim racing career. I don't know. This thing just changes weird, and I don't know. It seems to be the theme of. I was just saying it to the guys up in the chat. It seems to be the theme of the whole season. I lead a bunch of laps in the first 50-60% of the race, and then lose to Cedric in the last 40% of the race, 30% of the race. I don't know. I gotta figure out something, or else we're just gonna give this thing to Cedric. So gonna work on that and see what I can do to make some changes, I guess.
So Rockingham up next, a repaved track as far as we know. A brand new track on the DTH schedule over the first season and now season number 2. What do you expect out of there? Do you expect a similar level of chaos as we saw here tonight, or do you think we'll see much more of a tempered race with some strategy involved?
I think it's going to be chaos. I don't think it's going to be tempered, especially the guys that had a crappy race tonight. They're going to come out trying to rebound next week, and the Rock's interesting. We haven't been there in a while. I think Sunoco MPI years ago, and Ray Rogers dominated that race. So we'll see. We'll see what the repave, how the car handles, and see what the conditions are. It's a fun track. Hopefully with the car it's fun. Hopefully the combination's fun. And we'll see from there,
Well, Steven, as always, we appreciate the time we take to talk to you in days like this, good or bad, and the race is all over, but it's still a podium finish and all of that. Before we let you go, anybody you want to give a shout out to or thank for tonight?
Yeah, shout out to you guys, obviously doing the broadcast. I apologize on the car count. Sure what's going on there, but some stuff to fix for next few weeks. And then the admin team for putting this together, especially Warren. He puts a lot of work into it. And the TTH team, they had some bad luck tonight, but they'll rebound next week, especially Steven coming off a win. So he'll rebound. And then obviously my wife, my kids, my dad out there watching, my mom, love all them, and we'll rebound and see how Rockingham goes.
Well, Steven, we appreciate the time. Congratulations on the podium finish here from Chicagoland, and we'll see you in the field next week at Rockingham for the chase.
Thanks, buddy.
Steven Sempian closes out our top 3 tonight here from the virtual Chicagoland Speedway after a wild one. Cedric Hunter ends up the winner, and we close it out with just all the races left until the chase is over. One step down, but still many to go. At the end of it all, we come from a very hard-to-drive track in Chicagoland to a hard-to-drive 1-miler out in Rockingham, North Carolina. Rockingham makes its official series debut next Sunday, August 23rd. Be sure to tune in with us on the KBueno Racing Network, but that is not all that we have here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. Tomorrow night, we'll have coverage of the KBRN Truck Series live from Auto Club Speedway in Southern California. That'll come your way at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night on August 17th, and we'll be back in action on the Sunday night, August 23rd, to close out the next race of the 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series chase as it all continues to unfold. But as we've been seeing for a bulk of the season, it's been all this man right here. Cedric Hunter on his 9th race victory of the year, 10th in total, now tops the season standings as usual, and now tops the all-time wins list in Droppin the Hammah Cup Series history. For Steven Sempian, Warren, Kyle Keith, Richard Swavely, and the entire admin team at the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, and for everyone at the KBueno Racing Network, for Francisco Bacallao, Keelan Belsha, Charlie Byer, Nate Polite, Eli Comerford, Mikey Neal, and the rest of them, I'm Kenneth Bueno saying so long from Joliet, Illinois. The Huggard Oranges 300 goes to Cedric Hunter, now the all-time wins leader in Droppin the Hammah Cup Series history.